Yep, I see it there.
Meeting is now streaming live on YouTube. And it's so funny because like all of my videos seem to start that way now. So I have
Uh-huh.
to chop that all off for the podcast. But yeah, let me just do a real quick reset here and we'll get right into the show. Hey, welcome back to Mike Seibert Radio, powered by Poddex. I am your host, and this week my guest is Transformers fan artist Stan Chou, aka Artist Stan. And we're gonna talk a lot about our favorite robots in disguise, but we're also gonna talk a lot about his art and the various styles that he uses, as well as his live streaming and other cool projects that he's doing. So rather than me just rambling, I'm gonna try to stay out of my own way, and we're just gonna get right to it. Hey Stan, welcome to Mike Seibert Radio. Thanks for taking the time.
Hey, Mike. It's great to be on the show and great to be, among Transformers fans and to be, talking to with a fellow Transformer fan like you.
Absolutely. I really appreciate your recent interactivity. Like during my Flint Dilly interview, you came up with a really cool question about what happened to or what was originally going to happen to the rest of the 1984 1985 Autobots, and Flint gave a really cool answer about Charge of the Light Brigade and what was going to happen on Cybertron as they took on Unicron, and it was really cool. So I really appreciate you giving me that really cool question to ask, because I had kind of known that story a little bit already, so it was kind of off my radar. But the cool thing about questions like that is when you ask them again, sometimes you get cool answers that you weren't expecting, and that was definitely the case with my interview with Flint Dilly.
Yeah, I mean, the feeling is mutual because, I the description that he gave of this sort of cut, what I call a cut scene
Mm-hmm.
from the movie, or you could call it a cut script, like the entire script was cut, right? So now I have this new thing that I want to ask him a ton of questions about, this mysterious scrapped script, but even just this one part of the script, which gave a more valiant end to the 84 line of Autobots,
Mm-hmm.
which is something we all wanted because, my favorite Autobot at the time, Prowl, did not meet a valiant end.
No.
And yeah, it was just a pummeling, just a sheer pummeling. And I was talking about this with my brothers, who are also huge fans, and we fed each other all of our sort of energy, right, at the time as kids. Transformers, GI Joe, all that stuff. Um, but I was talking with them, and I was like, that Transformers '86 movie might have been really successful at the box office had they given us a lot more like powerful, empowering Autobot moments
Mm-hmm.
throughout, And if you needed to kill off the 84 line, go ahead, do it. I mean, I don't say that with full honesty, right? But if
Right, right.
you got to do what you got to do, Hasbro execs, but give us throw us a bone.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well said. And just as a quick recap for folks, Flint Dilly's new book, The Games Master, Almost Famous in the Geek 80s, is available now. You can order a autographed copy from Rare Bird Books. You can also get it on Amazon and on Audible. The audiobook version of it is phenomenal. And Flint Dilly, who was a story consultant on 1986's Transformers the movie, as well as the writer of Five Faces of Darkness, the kickoff to season 3 of the Transformers. And Transformers really just kind of is, I mean, I don't want to say it's a footnote, but it kind of basically scratches the surface of how prolific Flint Dilly really was. He did extensive work on, G.I. Joe and Visionaries and Inhumanoids, and just has this history with Gary Gygax of Dungeons and Dragons, and all kinds of other stuff that that I can't think of off the top of my head without my notes, but it is a fascinating read. He is a incredibly interesting dude. So if you haven't, go check out my interview with Flint Dille. There's a video version as well as a audio podcast version, and definitely check out the book. However you would like. It is again, it's really great, and I think I have paid proper homage and tribute to the estate of Flint Dille here, but I you know where
No,
I'm
he's a he's a big dude, in terms of what he provided for us growing up.
well
Even in Humanoids, something like that. Like my brothers and I, we loved it.
well I mean,
And
in Humanoids was just wild because basically it was Cthulhu for kids. It's crazy. But it's something you said there, Stan, about Flint Dille being a big guy. He is a big guy. He's like
oh,
6'5" or something
oh,
like that.
really?
He is a very tall, imposing man.
Yeah.
Like folks on Twitter right now, because like TFCon Toronto was supposed to be this weekend, but
Oh,
obviously got
gosh,
postponed
yeah.
due to the COVID. But a lot of folks are sharing photos and memories using the hashtag virtual TFCon. And a lot of folks have been sharing photos of them with Flint Dille. And it's so funny because I have yet in any of those pictures see anybody that's close to Flint Dille's height. Like I've got a buddy, Ryan, from the 1/3 of the Autopod Decepticast, and he
Mm.
took a picture with him when we were in Chicago. And I love you, Ryan, but he's a little dude. He's a little dude, and Flint is a big dude. So there's about like a foot of height
Yeah.
difference between them. It's almost cartoonish, but love you, Ryan. They're also interviewing Flint Dille. I think they recorded that this morning. And that's going to be available on the Autopod Decepticast feed sometime in the future. So really excited for that. But Stan, I know we're going to spend a lot of time talking about Transformers the movie, because one of the things that I discovered in acquainting myself with your art and your social media, it's a lot of your art is very centric and focused on Transformers the movie specifically. Like even like a lot of your pixel art will like reenact scenes with the dialogue and things like that. So we're definitely going to talk about that. I think we have the table very well set. But before we get too terribly much further, because every podcast, or in this case live stream, is somebody's first show, Stan, could you take a minute and perhaps introduce yourself? Let us know just a little bit about yourself, and then from there we'll talk about your art.
Yeah, sure. So let's see. I mean, where do I start, right? I've been drawing my whole life, and I wasn't so sure about kind of venturing towards an art career. So I, got a degree in business, and I went into translation. And I had a
Mm,
big interest in Japan, and so I went to Japan, and I taught English, and then I was a translator, working with Toyota a lot on their car repair manuals. And it got to a point where I was like, okay, where am I going with this? And life's getting kind of boring. And Japan was my dream, but it kind of it ran its course.
sure.
And so I came back to the US and, did some odd jobs. And I was like, all right, that's it. I want to do art. That's it. Like, but way before that, I discovered deviant art, and I rediscovered my love of, Marvel, because I got out of comics, and I got out of Transformers for a while, but I rediscovered my love of Marvel and Transformers on DeviantArt back in 2006. And then by 2009, I'd gotten somewhat of a following for my Transformers art back then.
Mhm.
But I never thought it would amount to anything. Back then, being a fan artist never meant that you became a pro. You just kind of lived and died as a fan artist.
Mhm.
I did not have the foresight like Casey Collier and some of these other people, um, um, that you could just keep doing that and become a pro. So I stopped drawing Transformers around 2009 or 2010. Um, and then just went about my Japan stuff, and then I came back to the US, and then I sort of picked it up again. And then around 2019, I really started hitting hard on social media, especially Instagram. And I was posting twice a day. I was drawing on my train commute into Manhattan, and and then I started to pick up steam. I have 5,000 followers now on Instagram.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
so
Congratulations.
thanks. Yeah, that's my main sort of success, and I've kind of I kind of forgot about Twitter. I was really big on Twitter when I was really pushing for a comics career as a
Yeah.
comics artist. So I got my followers up to 1,000, but then I just completely neglected my Twitter account for the longest time. But yeah, the comics was a big thing too. Like I was I you know I should have never stopped being a fan artist, because as a fan artist for Marvel, as a fan artist for Transformers, I really think I could have gotten somewhere if I just kept pushing from 2010 onward. But that said, back in 2013, when I went cold turkey, quit my job, my normal paying job, and I became a full time, zero income illustrator.
Yeah.
Um, I was full tilt. Like, I'm gonna get into Marvel. I'm gonna get into DC. I'm gonna do something. And I'm a pretty good artist. I can do it, right? I
Yeah.
was a little bit crazy, to put it that way, right? I was
Yeah.
like, yeah, give me a year, I'll break in. All these chumps who can't break in, they don't know what they're doing. And of course, I
Sure.
didn't break in, but I did break in with a guy who used to run Marvel. His name is Bill Gemmis, and
Oh,
he's the
yeah.
one.
Okay.
He's the one who gave me my first real, like, full-time job. And that first company, Double Take, folded. And then I went back to freelancing. And then he formed a second company called AWA, which has, I don't know if you've heard of Upshot,
Oh,
but it's run by Axel Alonso. And worked with him on Upshot. And now I'm working with Bill. I'm still working with Axel on Upshot, but we have another imprint now, which is Bill's imprint, which is called iPop. And so when I'm not doing that, spending all my time on Transformers and building I shouldn't say but just sort of like contributing to the Transformers community as much
yeah.
as I can. It's not about me. It's about this awesome community that is literally 0.00001% negativity and
Hmm.
99.99999% positivity in my arena, right? Like, I'm
Yeah.
not trying to get into all the other stuff. I don't spew hate. I do have my hot takes on stuff, but I don't go around, like, spewing that stuff. I just
Sure.
stay in my corner, my G1 corner, which is where my passion is. And like you said, Transformers the movie, which is sort of like the beginning of the end of G1.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Dilly's talk about, Five Faces wanting to redo Five Faces of Darkness. I found that kind of hilarious, because
Yeah.
Five Faces is like a debacle, an animation debacle, but it's hilarious. Like, the
Yeah.
errors in the animation are hilarious, and it's not bad. I actually rewatched the whole thing on Tubi TV
Uh-huh.
the other month, and it wasn't that bad. And I could totally see, like, the whole sort of arc, and I could kind of see it with new eyes.
Yeah.
And I hated it when I was a kid. I was like, because my friend, the first thing, after like we watched the movie Transformers the movie, and I talked to my next door neighbor. He was like, "Oh man, did you hear about Five Faces of Darkness? It's awesome. It's on TV, and it's whatever. It's the continuation to the movie, dudes." And I was like, "Oh," and I was like, my first question was like, "How good is the art?" Because back then I was already like hardcore, and I watched it. I mean, I knew what good art was. I wasn't like art blind,
Yeah.
even back then. And he was like, the art is exactly like the movie. And I was like, oh, no way. Like, where'd they get the budget for that?
Yeah.
He had no clue. Like, he had no eye for art at all. And when I
Sure.
when we when my brothers and I saw the animation, we just died. Like, we couldn't watch it. It was unwatchable.
Oh my gosh, that's funny. I don't know if I've ever had anybody try to sell me on season 3 or Five Faces of Darkness, trying to say it's just like the movie. Because it's not. I
Right.
mean, spiritually and kind of storytelling wise, I mean, one of the things that Flint said is that, Five Faces was really meant to be a sequel to the movie. And in a lot of ways it is, but I always felt that as a fan of the movie specifically, that there was always a more worthy sequel there. I even now, 35 years later, I'm still not sure exactly what that is. And I think a lot of that is because we've had season 3 and season 4, and then and then basically the brand has evolved beyond that story, the story of the original Sunbow cartoon. And yeah, it's like I don't know what a true sequel to Transformers the movie would look like. I don't think I can divorce myself from the material that we got.
Right.
Interesting.
That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah.
Um, it's sort of like we're armchair directors when it comes to that. When we see it, we can totally critique, the
Yeah.
heck out of it. But until we see it, we're like, we don't really know what it is, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. So I'm gonna try to bring up my share screen here and see if oh, there we go. Share screen, and I'm going to bring up a sample of your art for the audience here that's watching on the live stream. So this is a collage that you put up on Father's Day, if I remember correctly. I don't have the verbiage of the post in front of me, but it was really touching. Where you talked about Optimus Prime as being a father figure, and that it was very appropriate for Father's Day. But what I also thought with the different representation, I think this is very representative of the various styles of your art that I think would make for a really good jumping off point. When you and I first got acquainted, you reached out to me and said, "Hey, man, I'd like to be on your show." And I think at that point, I was just familiar with your pixel art. Like the kind of the images that were seen here below. I think maybe that was around the time of the hot rod video, but I'll come back to that in a sec. But yeah, it was just basically your pixel art that I was familiar with, and that was enough for me to be a fan. I was like, I really like this style. It's very evocative of 8-bit Nintendo, and kind of that whole style that's a lot of fun. But then I followed you on Instagram and I started checking out more of your art, and I was really very taken with the overall style. There's a lot of emotion that's conveyed in your art, and I um to the point where I couldn't even tell, because I'm not an artist myself. I couldn't even tell what kind of media was being used, because it looks like a
Oh,
lot of like mixed media. Even some of it looks like it's almost like charcoal drawings. It's very stylistic and it's very cool. But I thought, well, it's just kind of like an entree, if you wanted to kind of maybe talk about your art and the various styles of art, and we'll kind of unpack things from there.
yeah. First of all, thank you for looking at my art, and also for kind of digging a little deeper, into kind of the different styles that I've taken on over the years. The easiest way to put it is that um, I'm not very I'm not a one trick pony,
Okay.
and I think that encompasses even the way that I work even in the comic industry now. But I can go through what inspired me, to do these things. The sort of painted art style was something
Yeah.
that I picked up when my dad, was like, "Get an iPad." I'm like, I don't like iPads. Like, I'm not an Apple guy. He's like, "Get
Mm.
an iPad. I'll get you an iPencil." So he bought it for me, and then I was fooling around with Procreate, and Procreate has an incredible brush engine. And as a person who used Photoshop from since 1996, back when there was still only one undo,
Oh,
um, I've used art programs left and right for the past 2 decades. And Procreate is on another level in terms of the brush engine and the types of brushes that you can use. All the painted stuff you see here was done in Procreate. It's a $10 program, insane. But you have to quote
really?
unquote unlock the app by getting an iPad. So I have to thank my dad for that, for getting me an iPencil and an iPad, because that that pretty much solidifies Apple as like um a must have. I mean, the iPad and iPencil as a must have, right? Um let's see. So the pixel art, oh, I see the screen's changed a little bit here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I hit some wrong
Oh,
button.
okay, no, it's fine. So
Don't
the
mind
pixel
me.
art, the, the pixel art came out of sort of, okay, I've got to post more often on Instagram, on social media, but I don't have enough time to draw. And so I found that I could pump out, pixel art, maybe 4 or 5 of them, sometimes
Mhm.
in an hour, or because it's just a portrait. But it kind of has the same effect, like, and it also, it's a challenge because you have to capture that character's personality in a portrait. Um, so it was born out of sort of a time constraint. And then as I was, looking into more pixel art stuff and getting more into retro wave music,
Yeah.
I discovered the retro wave aesthetic, and then I started to incorporate that into my pixel art. Um, so basically, what I do is I hop around my inspiration, and that and I hop around technology, whether it's the iPad or the first pixel art that I did was actually on my phone, also on my train commutes. So I consider that technology. But I have a very sort of short attention span, and I
Okay.
love technology. So if when you combine those two things together, you're going to see me jump all over the place in terms of art style. And so I guess you could call me then like they're variety streamers. I'm a variety artist, which is
Okay.
like I'm not gonna always play Fortnite for from now to the end of time. I'm going to play the hottest game. I'm gonna try out new games, see what I like, go back to an old game every once in a while, etc. So and oh, the upper right one was inspired by Bill Sienkiewicz. I was
Oh,
looking
okay.
at his art,
I can see
and
that. Yeah, I
he
could
spawned he actually spawned the entire portrait series because he does really fabulous portraits. And that my first 1000, no, I should say when my Instagram account really took off was when I did these oversized portraits where you couldn't even see the borders of their heads. You only saw like the center of their face, kind of like the prime picture in the center here.
Mhm, mhm.
And that really took off on Instagram. I don't know if it's because out of curiosity, people are like, oh, if I click it, I wonder if I can see the whole head. But you can't. Even if you click it, you can't see the whole head. And it's kind of hard. It's kind of like it stands out more in the Instagram feed, I think. And pretty much every once I went to that format on Instagram, I got 1,000 likes on every post. And then because
Wow.
I'm crazy, I just stopped doing it because I lost interest in it. And of course, my likes are 500, 700 now. They don't go up to 1,000 or 2,000 anymore. But I have to be inspired to do stuff. If I'm not, or if I'm running out of content, I just can't do it. So right now I'm inspired by pixel art, and
Mhm.
I'm just gonna run with it. And I've got my next hot idea for pixel art. So I'm
Ah.
gonna run with it. And I'm really into Twitch right now. So I'm gonna run with it, and see where it takes me.
Very cool. Well, I am gonna try to share my screen again because the before we move on to your streaming on Twitch, you had mentioned your retrowave stuff earlier, and and I think this is the piece that one of the first things I saw of yours that really got my attention. It's Hot Rod from Transformers the movie, and of course, it's the scene where Dare kicks in, and this is just a sample of it that you put up on Twitter, but you did a full video where it's not only is it this scene, but you've got some really cool synthwave, like folks in the synthwave community. I'm sure are very familiar with the Midnight. You have a couple of their tracks on there, but the thing that I really liked about it also is that the scenery changes. It's like it goes from it goes to day to dusk to twilight to the evening and then back around again. And I maybe it was because of the music, maybe it was because of the pixelated nature of the art, but the first thing I thought of was the end of Mega Man 2, where, like, after you beat the game, Mega Man is just kind of going on this walkabout, and like the seasons change, his suit changes colors as each season passes, and it just really struck me, and I just thought this was a really cool piece.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much. This was a ton of fun to make, and we talking about the changing of the day cycle that I added
Hmm.
into the full 18-minute version. That's just another example of technology. Like that was all After Effects, and I got into After Effects again way back in 2010. Around that, I guess I had a burst of creativity at that
Hmm.
time, and After Effects just blows my mind in terms of the things that you can do. And I've gotten back into After Effects because I've been doing using After Effects at work for marketing stuff. And I just got familiar with it again. I got used to opening it up every day for work. And then I was like, look, I'm just gonna go onto YouTube, look at a couple of tutorials and figure out how to do some of this retrowave stuff. I know it's not hard. Um, and once I had the base assets done in Clip Studio, which is the art program that I prefer these days, um I dumped it into After Effects, and then I just got all that stuff done. And then the retrowave music, and the running, and all of that, I mean there's it just, like, there's one Midnight Song where in the beginning the girl, I think it's the audio from Karate Kid, where she's like, let's run away. Like, I don't know what it was in the
Yeah,
80s, but running away was a thing, man. Like, I
definitely.
dreamed of running away. I had like a loving family and everything. And I was like, I want to run away. Like, what did freaking Hollywood, like, screw kids up minds up with that stuff, man? That's crazy, right? If you think
Mhm.
about that, and think about the kids that actually ran away and, like, or disappeared. Like, I
Yeah.
could have been one of those kids, man. No, it's not a laughing matter, because kids, like, something like 500,000 kids go missing every year. It's like insane, dude.
Yeah.
It's insane. I mean, that's a tangent, but, like, and then going to anime like Mega Man, I was never really a big Mega Man fan, but when you're talking about anime and the video game aesthetic and everything, they had the same, like, melancholy and, like, total, like, this sort of emotional side to things that were ultra deep. Like
Mhm.
like even like the end of Fist of the North Star, the movie where he's walking, and
Yes.
his girlfriend is dead, but he sees ghosts of her, like, walking around, and you're like, man, is this real? God, I wish this was real. And it disappears and it's desert again. You're like, oh my gosh, like that kind of stuff. But like ending credits, like Saint Seiya, I was a huge fan of Saint Seiya, which is only because I was in Taiwan at the time, and
Mhm.
here in the US, it was Dragon Ball. I got picked up from that time, but I was in Taiwan at the time. I'm Taiwanese by descent,
Mm.
raised in America, but I went back to Taiwan to live for 6 years. And it's close to Japan, so I picked up a lot of stuff from Japan back in the late '80s and early '90s, and I totally got into Saint Seiya. And Saint Seiya had a ton of melancholy,
Mhm.
just sad scenes, and that's baked into how I want to and how I think about cartoons.
Mhm.
And of course, all anime now, people know, right? People know anime is like the full spectrum. Like, you'll have funny scenes, scenes that'll make you outright cry like a
Mhm.
baby. Like,
Oh,
and
yeah.
that was never like a goal for like American animation. Now they know a little bit about that, and maybe
Yeah.
Disney knew about that, and Pixar knows about that. Pixar can make people cry, but anime is
Exactly.
like we've been doing that for like what, like 50 years,
Exactly.
like, yeah, like,
It's like, "Oh, that's cute."
yeah, right, right. But
But
like, yeah, I'm glad you brought up Mega Man, because Mega Man is huge, and pixel art Mega Man, that's like ultra, like, match made in heaven. And
Mhm.
just another thing about pixel art is it's like the building blocks of the digital screens that we work with are pixels. No matter
Yeah.
how photoreal you get, it's pixels. So pixels are actually the ultimate, I should say, digital screens are the ultimate vehicle for pixel art. And that's why I think,
Yeah.
I don't know why, but pixel art gets a ton of likes and a ton of eyeballs, just because it's the natural, the literal natural environment for like, if I hand drew a pencil piece and I put it on a post, it's just, that's just not the natural way you look at it, right? Like,
Yeah.
if I gave you a pencil piece, it just hits you differently, you know?
Yeah.
So it's just pixel art, just it just, I love it for that reason, you know?
Yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, what one quick tangent before we segue into talking about your live stream and the stuff you've been doing on Twitch, because I'm looking at your Optimus Prime piece that that you did there, and I really want to talk about it, but I didn't want to lose this thread. We were talking about how anime really kind of like stirs emotions, and it was just depth and complex. And I really think that Transformers the movie was really kind of one of the first major animated studios that really had that vibe and aesthetic. It's like I've said in several other places that Transformers the movie is for a lot of American audiences, especially a lot of young suburban kids. That's kind of the gateway to anime. You know, it's like there's I think especially the complexity of the animation and the depth of the storytelling. You know, it was more sophisticated than those episodes that we talked about earlier with, you know, Jazz being a snowman and Optimus Prime playing basketball. You know, it's like it was a intentionally more adult level sophistication, or at least young adult. You know, they were targeting teenagers was what they thought their audience was going to be for the movie. But I think that's why it's become gone on to become a cult classic, and why I think folks like us continually go back to it, because even now in the Transformers community, you know, there's certain segments of it, it's like, you know, let the movie go. You know, it's like it was a thing that happened, and it's like, you
Yeah.
know, it's not important now. Like, you know, I don't know how much we want to tangent and litigate the politics of the toys, but there's a little bit of controversy going on now with regards to the studio series line of action figures
Mhm.
that up until now has been all Bayverse, Michael Bay live action aesthetic, but there are recent solicitations to suggest, and nothing has been formally announced yet, I don't believe,
Mhm.
that the studio series line will start to incorporate characters from the 1986 Transformers the movie. And for me at least, I'm incredibly excited for that opportunity. I would love nothing better than to actually buy a action figure that says Transformers the movie on it specifically. Because like, while I've had all the characters, I've never really had something branded like that that says the Transformers the movie. But the controversy comes from, it's like, well, as far as the toys go, we're already kind of at peak G1. You know, it's like the War for Cybertron series, you know, Earthrise, Siege, and whatever the third part ends up being, is rotten with G1. And you know, you get more versions of Optimus, you get more versions of Starscream. Um, I'm gonna get more versions of Soundwave though, so I'm cool. I'm cool with that. So I'm not gonna complain. But that criticism is, it's like, you know what, you G1ers already have you know, you can go get your characters. Where's my Unicron trilogy? Where's my you know, car robots? You know, where's the Japanese characters? You know, that kind of thing. Why do we really need to rehash all this? And really it's kind of like, you know, get your G1 out of my movie line, and where I think a lot of the controversy is. But again, for me, and I realize that I've taken like a huge tangent, but it's
No, it's fine, yeah.
again, I think the movie Transformers the movie 1986 is important enough of a touchstone to where I think it deserves to have its own branded line, and next year's the 35th anniversary. So I think if there's a time to do it, why not now, as opposed to waiting 5 years, because who knows what the landscape is going to be in 5 years. Are people even going to be into Transformers then? I don't know. Anyway, that's that's just a random tangent for me about my love for Transformers the movie.
Well, I mean, it's very relevant, and I think there's so many things I could touch on, but probably the biggest thing is the toy wars,
Mhm.
the whole discussion and the whole viewership of toy reviews not just viewership, but just purchasing
Yeah,
of toys. I mean, that's what Transformers is all about, right? So very relevant. And personally, I would love to see more and more iterations of the same stuff. And the reason I say that is because every time a new Optimus Prime comes out and it looks like the red truck that we all came to love, the flat nosed, this, what
yeah.
would you call it? The flat front
Cab
cab.
over.
Yeah. Um, I'm excited to see what innovation they've done on the transformation. Every time, without fail. Like when the two third party masterpiece Optimuses came out, and then the
Yes.
actual masterpiece came out. My eyes were glued to to YouTube watching the reviewers transform this thing, because I was just the engineering has come so far um from the G1 thing. I mean, granted, I love the simplicity of the G1 transformations,
Sure.
but yeah, bring it on. Bring on a Studio Series line set with another clever engineering person or engineering lead, because every once you change the engineering lead, like, remember when on the masterpiece line they changed the engineering lead and everything started changing, like there were like smooth panels on
Yeah.
like on Ironhide, which you hadn't seen before, because everything was chiseled and real nice, like little
Mhm.
detail in there and stuff. And then you had like Trax, who like looks like he went through the 1986 movie and someone blew a hole in his side, like you hadn't seen that before in Masterpiece.
Yeah.
So just like, but every time, there's pros and cons to that. And I love seeing 100 versions of Optimus. I'll never get sick of it. um and then you brought up another point too, just about wanting to see other toy lines being represented. And I mean, the Transformers fandom is great, because it's like so many different slices of generations, and you could slice a decade into how many different fandoms.
Yeah.
I don't, nothing on Beast Wars, but I just don't touch it.
Sure.
But amazing fandom there, right? TFA, like TFA, my brother says it's one of the only other Transformers series that he likes.
Mhm.
So there's definitely something there, right? My favorite part of TFA was that little bit on Cybertron where you got to see Rodimus, and you got to see a couple other characters. I think Minerva was in there, the medic. Oh
Yeah.
no, she was Red Alert. She was Red Alert,
Oh,
but she
okay.
looked like Minerva. But it was like this incredible action scene. And it was so hard hitting, and I was like, "What is this? Did some anime guy make this?" Like, like, did they bring on some like anime fanatic, to do this? Well, but I want to go back to what you said about Transformers the movie,
Yeah, of course.
about how it was like it harkened to sort of anime. And I don't know who to attribute that to, other than Nelson Shin, who was obviously Asian, and he
Absolutely.
probably had some connection to some. Well, obviously Hasbro had connections to Japanese designers and animators, but a lot of the storyboards or keyframes, I want to believe, were done by Japanese artists,
Mhm.
because just the dynamic, the the way Optimus Prime jumps into the sky, like nobody has replicated
Yes.
that. Even in the Bumblebee movie, if you look at the way he jumps over that, even though it's an homage, it doesn't even come close. Like
Right.
like the way his body moves is completely stiff. If you watch the hand drawn animation, holy smokes! Like that jump into the sky, it's
It's
like
iconic. It's
I'm gonna
iconic.
pixel art that. I'm gonna pixel art that and just like solidify that too in pixel art fandom. Just to tangent a little bit, I went and did some of the commercial bumpers um
Yes.
in pixel art as well, and that went over so well on Twitter as well. Like the hot rod one,
Mhm.
that was my realization that Twitter could also be a place for stuff to get a lot of traction. because
Mhm.
at that point I had only viewed Twitter as a comics networking tool for me.
Sure,
And that's
sure.
why I just stopped posting. Occasionally I'd post some Transformers now and then, but I'd still only get 5 likes, 10 likes. So I was like, it's not worth it. I'll just stay
Mhm.
on Instagram. But when I put up the bumpers and I started putting more like moving content, like motion content, and
Yeah.
I was like, hey, well, Twitter loves this stuff, so it's really viable. So now I've been posting to Twitter a little bit more often, not a whole lot more often, but a little bit more often. Just not. I'm not. I've never been big on spam, so I
Sure.
just I figure people will find me when I have something good to post. So
Exactly. And a thing that's interesting on Twitter and Transformers fandom is depending upon who you talk to, a lot of folks will say that that's where Transformers fandom lives.
oh,
Like there's a lot of Transformers fandom
okay,
out on Twitter, and a lot of it comes from folks that feel underrepresented. Like, they don't
right,
necessarily have voices in other platforms,
right,
and so it's again, not getting like weirdly contrarian or political or something, but it is interesting and telling that there is an official GI Joe Twitter account, but there is not an official Transformers account out on Twitter. So it's like Hasbro, I don't know if they just don't value Twitter or they don't know what to do with it. Because like on the flip
interesting.
side of it, their Facebook and Instagram pages are straight up savage. Like
Uh-huh.
the official Transformers accounts, I mean, their meme game is strong, or at least it was for a hot second there. In ways of like, oh my gosh, this is like from the official account, kind of like how like Wendy's will have some like, pretty viral tweets. It's but anyway,
Yeah,
yeah, it just seems like there's a lot of Transformers fandom out on Twitter, and a lot of sharing happens there as well. Like and in different spaces. It's like a lot of fan fiction gets shared out there, and there's a lot of fan art as well.
yeah.
It's a very vibrant community. So it's you're in good company when you're sharing stuff out on Twitter for sure.
That's great to know. And also just it's the passion is so great.
Hmm.
That's all I can say is that there's real and young and old, and
Yeah.
again, across, like you said, across the spectrum, underrepresented people, everything. There's a place for everybody. And even some of the slash stuff, like when I got back into deviant art, back in the the, the end of the first deck, 2005, 2006 to 2010.
Sure.
I did I did one picture of Jazz and Prowl, kind of like hanging out on the beach,
Yeah.
or in the
Okay.
water, shallow water. And it was totally fun to draw, and it wasn't like outright like saying anything.
Hmm.
So I liked that I could do that piece. And you know um kind of explore the new at the time, a new-ish to me sort of headspace on, like, okay, how can I pair up characters when I'm thinking about the composition, because
Hmm.
that's a big part of it, right? It's like, oh, Lambros, right? Obviously, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I had
For
never
sure.
thought of like Jazz and Prowl, right, per se. I would always consider Prowl to be with Prime at that point, because to me, Prowl, I was a big tech spec fan. Again, kudos to my brother for pointing that stuff out to me. But his rank was 9. He was the second ranking Autobot at the time. So
Mm.
that's why I liked him, because I was never like, oh, I'm gonna be number one. I'm gonna be Michael Jordan. I was always like, I'm gonna be Scottie Pippen.
Yeah. See,
Because like,
I totally understand what you're saying there, because I've said here on the podcast many times, like the characters that always resonated with me were always like the second in command folks. It's like, Destro,
oh
Soundwave,
yeah,
Will Riker, like those
yeah.
those kind of characters I always enjoyed, because like,
That's funny. It's funny that you mentioned Destro, because I loved Destro, but I didn't consider him as like a similar thing to Prowl. But you're so right.
sure.
You're so right. Destro was awesome. I wanted to take off his silver mask. Like,
Yeah.
it was awesome that he was buff too, because buff
Right.
was a huge thing back then. Like everybody like wanted to be buff back then,
Yeah, that was all part of the stereotypical 80s aesthetic.
hmm
Um yeah, very very interesting.
He had the open front on the
Yeah.
toy, and I was like,
It just
I was like, it's not quite like flesh tone. So like, what is that? What is it exactly they're showing there? You know?
yeah. Well, in my child's imagination, I was thinking it was almost kind of similar to Ricardo Montalban and Wrath of Khan, because he's got a very
Yeah,
similar, with like
yeah,
the padded
yeah, yeah, yeah,
sides to the open shirt,
yeah,
and it's very rich Corinthian leather.
yeah.
Oh my gosh. But yeah, Destro is awesome.
Like a red, the thigh straps, like we all
Yeah.
wanted thigh straps, and
Yeah.
like shin straps with a knife in there, like Rambo,
Yep.
And,
And bandoleo belts,
oh
just
yeah,
as
yeah,
many bullets as
cranium,
you could. I mean, that was just like a fashion statement, whether it was
yeah,
bullets or hand grenades. It's
yeah.
like if you could have like a shoulder strap with a half dozen grenades on it.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, and I wanted them to be removable. It pissed me off that the
Yeah.
the GI Joe toys had the grenades on them, and I'd be
Yep.
like, okay, he's pulling up his grenade now, but it's
Yeah.
still there,
Yeah.
but then even when they gave you grenades, it was like they would get lost and stuff. You'd have to spend a lot of your childhood like OCD, like making sure you
Mhm.
picked up all the weapons, not so that it wouldn't get vacuumed up by mom, that kind of thing.
That's awesome. All right, so let's I want to go back to your art for a sec, because one of the things for that tangent that I took us on, I kind of pushed us past this amazing Optimus Prime that you've done recently on your series of live streams on Twitch. And like I mentioned during pre-show, I kind of dipped in and out and watched part of it, but I found it uh very in a weird way almost relaxing. Just it had just the way that you narrate your live stream, and as you're doing your art, it almost had like a Bob Ross type of thing. It's like, okay, now I'm just going to fill in some detail over here. And I hadn't really seen art made like that live. I don't dip into too many live streams for digital art, but I thought we'd take a couple minutes and kind of chat about kind of like some of the new stuff that you're doing on Twitch and growing your channel that way, and how maybe a piece like this is similar or different than some of the other art that you've been doing.
Yeah. Again, first off, thanks for poking into the Twitch stream. In this particular stream, I didn't talk that much because I was just kind of just kind of working through how I'm going to do my Twitch stream.
Yeah.
But this is done on a different software. So like I mentioned earlier, it's a Clip Studio. Whereas the painted, more the chalky kind of like grainy stuff, that's all Procreate, and that's just
Mm.
the awesome brushes that they have. But Clip Studio was designed by manga artists to create manga art, and the brush. And again, all I talk about is brush engines, right? Like that's what like drives my 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 libido or whatever.
Sure.
But
It seems like
so
that should be a new character named Brush Engine.
oh yeah, okay, that's it. I'm making a transformer called Brush Engine.
There it is.
Um, but like the Brush Engine's so good, and it's designed for manga,
Mhm.
and what just and when they added color to the engine, they brought on this thing called watercolor, which was the thing that I've been wanting my whole life from Photoshop, because Photoshop, it just is for me, to me, it's obviously awesome for thousands and thousands of people out there. But for me, it
Sure.
just missed the mark somehow at some point because the brush engine was slow and it didn't have a watercolor brush that I wanted. And so, I could go on and on about this, but I start with watercolor, just doing grays,
Okay.
and then I go over it with a manga pen. And I don't know if you saw during the stream, but the manga pen, I go super rough. Like I don't actually lay down like final inks on this. I go super rough with the manga inks, and then I go back to watercolor.
Oh,
Um, so that's kind of what you're seeing here is like this sort of watercolor painted thing, and then at the end I go in with the highlights and but even the background, it's like it's all watercolor and blending. That's why it's like really soft. And then also you don't see the
yeah.
ink lines because there basically are no ink lines, and if there are, they're really short. They're really thin. So you can see like these really, if you zoom in really close, you'll see messy ink lines. But
Let's see if I could do that here. Oh,
yeah,
oh, oh, no, that's something else entirely.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But that's that in the gist. But yeah, it's like on his backpack there, you can see some hairy
Oh,
garments.
sure, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And those are just
Interesting.
leftover hairlines.
So like some artifacts there.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
That
but you
that's
don't even notice it, and that's I just saved so much time because I don't have to break my back inking it, and
mhm.
then inking it destroys some of the not photorealism, but just sort of you can't highlight as well, I guess. Like when you want to put the corner highlights on the metal, like
Sure.
with the ink line there, it's just so distracting, you know. So,
Yeah,
uh,
and I was really struck by how well the colors blend. It has like, a very soft almost pastel watercolory
yeah, yeah.
type of vibe to it. I like I said, it was really cool and very fascinating to watch.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's just, anytime you get into the sort of hard lines of inking or hard lines of like cell shading,
Mhm.
where you're gonna do like a like Transformers Devastation, the game, where these beautiful like cell shading, even Transformers the movie, you see is really beautiful. Like, and
Yeah.
that stuff
Yeah,
takes
for
so
sure.
much time because you draw it, you look at it, you're like, yeah, it doesn't look right. You draw it again, you're like, it doesn't look right. But then with watercolor, you just blend it, and you're like, yeah, looks kind of realish, you know. And then instead of doing the diagonal um anime sort of highlight streaks, you just highlight the edge, like you see on that art, like I did on the art,
Yeah.
like that point on the corner of the shoulder, or that line on the corner of the leg, that does almost the same thing.
Mhm.
So then I just finished the picture. So I finished that picture. I don't know how long it took, but it wasn't on the order of 8 hours, right? So I did it in two
Right.
live streams. So it was probably like at like max 3 hours. So to
Wow.
me, heck yeah, I'll do 3 hours for a painted piece, and then I can use that till the end of time, if I need to. If I do a TF con, I want to do a TF con someday finally, because like now with COVID and all this stuff, I'm like, 'cause I was always like, I'll do TF con next year. Oh, I'll do it next year. I'll do it
Yep.
next year. But now
Yep.
it's just like, well, I don't know. Well, will we ever get to do this stuff again? But now if we do, now I know it's like, oh, it can be taken away from us.
Yeah.
Like, so I don't want to miss another one.
Yeah, and I think that's what's kind of struck us about the times we're in is how fleeting a lot of this stuff is. Like, TF cons happen a lot, and to the point where it's easy to take for granted.
Yeah.
But seeing everybody's posts and photos and memories and shares this weekend makes me realize that, yeah, that's a thing that we don't have. That thing that I decided I didn't have the time or money or resources to go do.
Yeah.
That's kind of like a special thing that I can't do right now, even if I wanted to, and that's a weird feeling to have.
Yeah, yeah, and I think I just had a thought because I was, I've been rooting around on Twitch a lot, like way. I've already said Twitch like 200 times in this
It's all
show,
good.
but like that's just the way I get so laser focused on something,
Yeah.
and then when we talk half a year later, I'll be on to something else. That's how my brain works. But I was on Twitch, and there was like this VR chat thing where, like, not in Twitch itself, but there are these VR chat programs where it's like you pick an avatar and you go into like a bar, so to speak, right? And I think like audio is like they decrease the volume of someone standing farther away from you, so it kind of feels like you're actually in a venue. So I
Mm.
wonder if in the future, like they've talked about VR cons, right? And you're like, yeah, that sounds stupid, right? But imagine if a VR con was kind of coolish and they got the technology down right to where you get to pick your avatar, meaning you can cosplay, right?
Okay.
And then
Okay.
if I set up a booth, then you can buy my wares right at you with a click and a credit card, right? Which is kind of cool, or bits or whatever you want,
Sure,
right? Whatever
sure.
currency you're running in this cool thing that Amazon has or YouTube has, whatever, right? I can roam around the con. I can still see, cool people. We can still have cool conversations. I don't know, man. If they get it to that level, then we might be onto something. And
Yeah.
if cons take the lion's share of the money, like Reed Pop is taking the lion's share of the money for this kind of venue, then nobody else has access to that revenue stream, right?
Yep.
Reed Pop just owns everybody, like completely destroys the competition, right?
Yep.
From my perspective, right?
Oh,
But
yeah, sure.
but then let's just say that now money's shifting right now in COVID, right? So if
Yeah.
money shifts out of Reed Pop and San Diego Comic Con and Wizard World, kind of like, okay, money's shifting out of education, right? They're cutting education budgets now, right? So where's the money going, right? So it's kind of like in the comic industry too. It's like, where's the money going?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously money's flowing into Webtoon, but but on the in the VR and the con scene, is it going to go into VR? Like, is a lot of that that seed cash
Mhm.
what do you call it, venture capital, is it
Yeah.
going to go into VR to create more of this stuff, and maybe a year later it'll be developed enough for us to join these VR cons? Hey, that I'm all for technology. You'll see me talking about this like for hours, like
Yeah.
this is the next thing. You got to do this thing. Everyone's got to get on this thing, just I think that's, if I live to 100, it'll be because I'm always excited about technology and the next thing. Yeah.
Well, and it's fascinating to explore because we're already seeing the infancy of that a little bit. Like the last TF Con, um which one was it, DC? No, oh, I'm sorry, TF Con Orlando.
Mhm.
February feels like a lifetime ago.
Yeah.
It's like, wait a
Yeah.
minute, was that like 2 years ago? What is time?
Yeah.
Quarantine.
Yeah.
But so TFCon Orlando was canceled, but they ended up having the third party panel anyway. They did it
Mm.
as a live stream because all of the slides were already prepared, the material was already done, so they just did it as a stream.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a really cool way to share that information. And now we're seeing that evolve further. Like, I mean, we're still a couple weeks away from whatever this virtual San Diego Comic Con is going to be.
Right.
But we're seeing, more and more stuff that quite frankly is like this. It's
Mhm.
Zoom and Skype and other conferencing apps are more prolific and more folks are learning how to use them. It's weird
Yeah.
because like stuff like this used to be the tools of like content creators. But
Mhm.
now I think my first exposure to Zoom was with my real estate agent when I was moving.
Mhm. Mhm.
So it's like, and I was like, wow, this is really intuitive and
Yeah.
very easy to use. And
Yeah.
like if my parents can figure out Zoom,
Yeah.
then that just makes us one step closer to that VR experience you were talking about, even to where like here locally in Seattle we have a local independent unofficial Transformers convention called Cybfest.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it was going to be the first weekend in August. And um our county, King County here in the Seattle area has one of like the stiffest, tightest regulations and kind of hold on reopening. I mean, we're still kind of circling the drain in phase two, maybe if we're
Wow.
fortunate.
Yeah.
But so basically what knowing that there's going to be like 3 weeks in between phases, mathematically, we're not going to be at phase four. by the beginning of August, and especially now that cases are spiking again.
You're right.
But so the show organizers decided to make it a all virtual streaming con. So basically, what they're doing is they're parsing out blocks of time, and then that time can be filled on a stream from folks from vendors, just like somebody like, hey, look at all my stuff. This is all my stuff. Here's my Etsy shop, or here's
Yeah.
my PayPal, or whatever. Hit me up in my DMs and we can make a deal. To content creators, like I'm doing I'm kind of closing things out with the show organizers, kind of doing a roundtable podcast, kind of similar to what we're doing here.
Hmm.
But it's one of those things where it used to be just kind of like this teeny tiny local show that would have a couple hundred folks come through, but now with it streaming theoretically worldwide, it'll be interesting to see what level of participation we get. Like there's folks from out of the area that I've already seen sign up, Apollo and I don't remember her artist partner's friend name off the top of my head, but anyway,
Hmm.
they're from the Portland area, and they're going to do a streaming panel just talking about female artists in the fan art community, which is probably not something that they would have been able to do in
Yeah.
a traditional face-to-face situation. So it'd just be very cool to see how that goes as an experiment, and who knows where TFCon goes from there.
Yeah. I think this is where, humankind is at our most creative, because we're trying to find solutions to problems. We're not being status quo. And I think I just would like to approach it that way. I think, like, I won't, if things had gone on without COVID, as business as usual, I would never have gotten a VR headset. I mean, I still don't have a VR
Right,
headset, right? But I think
right.
we're getting closer to that, because it's like, okay, we can't, if we're going to be running these events, right? And you're looking at this screen. Let's get my how do I get my thumb here? Right, like this
There you go.
screen. Like, I mean, my one of my friends, my old friends that I met in Japan, he was in enterprise VR for a while, and he had such a he told me, or I watched one of his presentations or something, but he was like, how ridiculous is it that we're still working on this screen when you could put on a VR headset and you could have your screens all around you, and the screen that you need, you just push to the side here, and you could have your email on the side here, and never have to, all these layers we have on our screen, like, you don't have to deal with that when you have a VR headset. I imagine a VR headset as being heavy. It's straining my eyes after an
Yeah.
hour, and all these things. But imagine all the venture capital and all the potential revenue to be made if all of us had VR headsets, and we get closer and closer to, what's that movie? Uh,
Minority Report.
well, Minority Report, and the
Because
other
I
one,
because
the
I
other
thought of
one that,
that when you were moving screens and things like
oh
that.
yes, yeah, but then the other one that just came out where there's that battle for the key or something.
Oh, Ready Player One.
Ready Player One, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
where it's like that. We all have our Oculus Rifts,
Yep.
we all love the stuff, and we all have a reason to be home, right?
Hmm.
Because if we don't have a reason to be home, we're gonna go out, right? But
Yeah.
we all have, a reason to be home, and okay, this is changing the landscape. This is fast forwarding us, into Ready Player One, right?
Yeah.
Whether we like it or not. And hey, I love tech, so so be it. I'm not a protester by heart.
Sure.
At heart, I kind of go with the flow, you know. Um, hey, and I think, we gotta do stuff. I mean, I have kids, so I'm not here to, like, push for the past or push for the future. I just got to go with the flow.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna do just that.
Mhm. Interesting perspective, for sure. And I think the thing that we've seen, all over with regards to COVID and the pandemic, is that it's accelerated the expiration date on a lot of
Yeah,
outdated models. Like,
yeah.
are we really going to go back to the movies? I don't know.
Yeah,
Um,
hey, I personally I been going to the movies only twice or three times a year for those big super tentpole Star Wars movies or whatever. Maybe an MCU movie here or there.
sure.
Um, but honestly, I started telling people this many years ago. I was like, I kind of don't want to go into a dark room with a bunch of strangers. And I'm not a germaphobe or whatever, right?
Yeah.
But it's just like, it sometimes like the temperature's off. Like I'm too cold. Like I don't want to be
Yeah.
cold. I don't want to be uncomfortable, right? I don't want to have to go to the bathroom like and miss a scene. Sometimes I mean I don't know what my luck is in movie theaters, but the audio would always be screwed up, or they would leave me on the edge of my seat with bad audio through all of the trailers,
Yeah.
and then the first minute of the movie with bad audio, and then they turn on the surround sound. Like I don't know why, but every time they see me go into a movie theater, they say, "Okay, that's Stan. We're gonna screw up the audio and give him a heart attack. That he's gonna have a bad audio experience." You know what I mean? It's like, why do you like? If you had been better to me,
Yeah.
like I would love your movie theater more. You know?
They saw you coming. They're like, "Oh man, that it's Stan, it's Stan. Quick, go turn off the audio. No,
Yeah.
that's too good. You got to fiddle with the knobs more. More
Like
surround, less
my
surround."
when I watched Seven in the movie theater back when I was in college, they
Sure.
screwed up the second reel or whatever.
Oh
And so they
no.
jumped to the ending. Like at one point, arbitrary point, they jumped to the ending and somebody had blood all over them. And it was the end of the boom. It was the end of the movie. I was like, and it was running backwards.
Oh my
And it was
gosh.
like, it's like, what? Come on, what the hell?
I've never had an experience like that. I think like the
Really bad.
the worst thing that's happened to me, I think watching a movie, I'd have to think about this. I mean, just from like a quality experience, like we went to go see Spider-Man, the first one, the Sam Raimi one, and it like how like the film will get stuck. And when it gets
Mhm.
stuck, the light bulb will heat it up and it'll melt. And
Oh,
apparently that was still a thing in 2002, because yeah, it hadn't quite gone all digital yet. That was
yeah.
kind of like at the very beginning of that. It was like, first of all, I was like, oh, well, that's a real film print. That's pretty cool. But yeah, you
You're,
burned
you're
all the way
actually
through.
you're right on the money because the very first all digital film. I mean, I think there was still what do you call it? When they sent the reel to the theaters, there was still
Yeah.
actual film, but the first all digital movie ever filmed was Attack of the Clones.
Yep.
Right? Oh, you know that obviously. We could probably
Oh
talk
no.
about
Oh,
Star
that's
Wars.
talk
We could
about
probably
Star
talk about
Wars.
Star Wars for a long time too.
Well, and it's interesting because yeah, that's I mean that was like a really big deal at the time because George Lucas was kind of almost holding the theater owners hostage. It's like, hey man, you want this new Star War? Well, then you have to replace all of your cameras, or at
Oh,
least
did he
bring in the
force that?
yeah.
But did celluloid still go out, or was it all digital? You had to have a digital projector.
I think I mean because at that point it wasn't like a clean break, but
Yeah, I think yeah.
what it was is they had to have a certain number of digital cameras to be
Okay,
able to exhibit
got it.
Attack of the Clones. So yeah,
Got it.
it wasn't like, oh, you have to change all of your cameras, which is literally what I just said.
Yeah.
That's an exaggeration,
This is
but
this is a
but you had
tangent,
to
but
buy new equipment was what it was. And he
yeah.
wanted to do it for Phantom Menace, but the technology just wasn't quite there. And
And he didn't
that
have proof that he could sell it. Like
exactly.
like he needs proof, right? But
I know,
it's
right?
still people still need that proof these days. Like, okay,
Yeah,
your last movie was 83. Can you prove that this thing can still
yeah,
sell like 400 million, which domestic Phantom Menace did. So
yeah. And it's interesting though, and I don't want to necessarily go on like this whole film tangent, though it sounds like we easily could. You watch those prequels. I mean, episode 2 and episode 3 specifically, because they were shot digitally, doesn't hold up, man. There's like a softness to it, and it just
and then when you go 60 FPS, it just looks really
it
it looks like a soap opera, like a TV soap opera,
it
right?
really does. It really does. Has yeah, soap opera is the perfect example to that, with like like the frame rate isn't quite right, and
Right.
it's very interesting. So
Now I'm tangenting again, but like
of
there are
course,
like fake 60 FPS like up converts. What do you call it? Upscales or whatever
Yeah, yeah.
for Transformers and Akira, the animation,
Oh,
and I couldn't. But anyway, I love it. People are going all around saying, "Oh, it's fake. It's a fake 60 FPS. It doesn't do anything for them." I don't care. Like you go to 60 FPS on any of these animations, like it just looks crazy awesome. I love it.
that would be really cool. I'm gonna have to check that out now. See if I can dig some stuff up because yeah, just the speed and smoothness of it. I think that would be
Yeah,
I think that would
yeah.
be a very interesting experiment.
It's
So
kind of like when remember when like converting things to 3D movies was the craze, and they would
yes,
take an old movie and convert it to 3D,
yep,
and some of them sometimes it was done tastefully.
yeah,
Like I felt Avatar, James Cameron's Avatar was tastefully converted to 3D because there was only like three layers, like
yeah.
foreground, midground, and background. But then
Mhm.
some of those other 3D movies, they really blew out the 3D where stuff got blurry and stuff, and I was like, yeah, not my cup of tea.
Yeah. I hear you there. It'll be interesting to see. I mean, I think 3D is pretty much done for. Like I occasionally jump on a podcast with my buddy who does a side tangent show like once or twice a year called 3D Never Die. And he is for whatever reason, and he can't even articulate it, but there's something about 3D that's always struck his imagination. So anything that comes out in 3D, he will buy it even if it
It's awesome.
doesn't matter if it's any good or not. I mean,
That's
he'll
awesome.
just buy it to support the format, and it's
Well, what was cool was like a Nintendo 3DS where you didn't even need glasses to be able to
yes.
experience a version of 3D. And again, I just say tasteful 3D is just a couple layers, just a
Mhm.
couple. It does the job, and that's all I need. I'm not. I never need like all the bells and whistles, right?
Awesome. Yeah, I agree with you. And like I said, I mean, we could go on and on about that forever. But let's tangent back and talk a little bit more about Transformers. And again, my guest is Transformers fan artist Stan Cho, aka Artist Stan. He joins us now, and I've got you know, I think I've asked a couple of these questions to other fans in some of my interviews, but I thought as we got closer to closing out, I thought we would kind of race through some of these Transformers fandom ask questions.
Okay,
So
hot takes.
yeah, and there are going to be some scorchers in here, but a lot of it is like, you know, I think we touched on this earlier, but kind of when did you get into Transformers? What was that first spark that, as it were, that really got you into these robots in disguise?
Well, back in '84, I was 8 years old at the time, the ripe age for the target audience for this stuff. And I was GI Joe fan at the time. But when Transformers came out, my whole budget and all my brothers' budget, all went to Transformers, and just the craftsmanship, like nothing on the toy market at the time was like that, obviously, and it was just a testament to just how Japan was just craftsmen. They were
Yeah,
craftsmen at heart,
absolutely.
and they were doing a complexity. It just even the factories that were making these things were just next level. And kudos to America and the whole world for recognizing what this stuff was.
Yeah,
It was groundbreaking toy. They were groundbreaking toys. And the cartoons, I mean, that's all, what Ronald Reagan, right, with changing the law about being able to advertise to children, right?
correct. Yeah,
So
yeah.
that was kind of a match made in heaven for that too, right? But
Yay, capitalism.
but just I was in the right place at the right time. It
Yeah.
was the heyday of Transformers. The birth of that. So very proud to have been a part of that. That was the beginning of it all. But I left Transformers fandom after the movie, and then got back into it when I discovered deviant art, and I was getting an itch to draw again. I took a long hiatus from art because I was
Mhm.
like, okay, Japan, this is it. I'm never going to be a pro artist,
Yeah.
so whatever, right? I'm just gonna go to Japan, bury my bones there, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm never coming back to America. There's nothing for me here, right? Yeah, eat my words right there, right?
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, Transformers has embraced me, and I've embraced Transformers again, and we'll see where this takes me.
Awesome. I love it. Who was your first figure then?
I want to say it was Prowl. My first like worthy figure, I guess, because he was like an Autobot car, like not a mini bot, or
Right.
or something like that, right? And no hate against mini bots. I did have my favorite mini bots as Wind Charger, but
Oh, okay.
Prowl was my guy. Um, and uh, rank second in command. His only weakness was his firepower was only a 4. So anytime I was in a battle with all my friends with Prowl, my guy couldn't shoot anything and make anything fall down. I don't even know how I played with him. I guess he punched everybody down because he
Yeah,
he
sure.
was pretty strong. I recall, and
Yeah.
he had whatever courage and all that other stuff. Um, uh, and then when I went back, obviously he died in the movie, so that like destroyed me, right? And
Yeah.
he died like a fool, right? No, I don't know. It's gonna say a fool, but like there's even like if you really look closely at the animation, when the Decepticons break into the shuttle, he actually turns his chair away from them. I understand it's like he's using his chair as cover,
Yeah.
but then it made me sad that Braun was the first one to charge them because I mean, if they had more tactically retaliated against the Decepticons, like at least Ironhide and Ratchet went at them together. But
Yeah.
imagine if Brawn and Prowl went at them together and then went down. I think that would be so much cooler, Or
Yeah.
if Prowl lived up to his name as rank number 2, what if he had a couple of lines and coordinated an attack? I don't know if they cut budget. They didn't want Michael Bell. They didn't want to pay Michael Bell or what for for the voice.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I don't recall him talking. His line from the script got cut from the movie.
Yeah. Prowl
Um,
doesn't speak, but Michael Bell is in the movie.
oh, okay.
Yeah, he's a scrapper, scavenger.
Oh, good, good. That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
He
yeah,
does he does a
yeah.
couple
He's
of different voices. That's good.
yeah,
That's good.
yeah.
But
He's definitely in there.
cool. I'm glad to hear. Glad to hear. I love Michael Bell. Duke, right? Um,
Yeah,
and but um, uh, when Prowl died, that was a big thing for me. But then when I got back into Deviant art and Transformers art, I did a ton of Prowl art, and
yeah,
I got it all out of my system. And then I kind of stopped being a Prowl fan at that point because with the whole sort of reinvention of Prowl in the comic books,
hmm
I realized he maybe he wasn't really my guy, you know. And I'm not really sure. I mean, this is the most boring answer, but Optimus Prime is my favorite now
sure.
because he's easy to draw for me. I've drawn so many times now that I can draw him pretty much with my eyes closed.
Yeah.
Oh, I should mention, I failed to mention this, but the piece that I did, that we showed earlier, the watercolor painted piece, the one that I did on my Twitch stream,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
was like inspired by a toy photo of MP44, the Masterpiece Prime,
Oh, okay.
taken by I want to give them a shout out here. Let me just pull this up.
Sure.
But I am heavily inspired by toy photos because it gives me so much to work off of in terms of the detailing on the picture, and I get a really good sort of idea too on the pose, and I'm not tracing it per se, but I'm getting like a strong sort of inspiration from the toy photo. So the toy photo here, it says Master Andy's Kindergarten. I'm not sure what that is,
Okay.
but it's on the photo, and I think he's a photographer or he might have an Instagram account. But I really enjoy like on Instagram. I only follow like toy Instagram to Transformer toy Instagram accounts, and a couple other kinds of accounts. Just for art inspiration and also photography. Like composition. Um, and stuff like that. But so I look at a lot of toy photos,
Sure.
and then sometimes I get permission from the toy photographer. Sometimes I don't, which I probably should do a better job of doing that. But but I just find that the art and the toy photography just they kind of we're kind of a community as well.
Yeah.
I feel some of the toy photographers follow me,
hmm
and we have ongoing sort of kudos to each other on Instagram. So
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of interesting how there's I don't want to refer to it as clicks because that's not specifically accurate, but there are
Mhm.
like subgenres and subgenres of subgenres
Yeah,
of Transformers content creators. Like
yeah,
you'll like you were saying, like toy photographers,
yeah,
they usually run with their own. You'll have like fan fiction writers that kind of ride with their own.
yeah.
You've got podcasters, and we certainly ride with our own. And so yeah,
Yeah,
it's very interesting how so many different types of media can be and disparate media too. I mean, again,
yeah.
we're on a podcast talking about toy photography and digital fan art. So and it's
Right.
all inspired by Transformers. And I just
Yeah,
think that's incredibly fascinating
yeah,
how this robot franchise just inspires us to create and touches us in all of these different ways. It's very,
yeah,
very cool.
yeah. And I feel like, what I'm discovering about retrowave music, and when I read a
Yeah,
lot of the YouTube comments, it's people say like, "Oh, I wish I was born in that era," or when I listen to this music, it feels like I existed in that era. Kind of like this
yeah.
weird sort of alternate timeline thing, like, the Berenstein Bears thing, where it's
Yes,
like
yeah, that
there's a
Mandela
timeline
effect, yeah.
shift, or when was I born actually? Because when people listen to retrowave, they actually experience something similar to what people who were actually alive at the time, like us, or I don't know when you were born, but when I was there, I experienced it, but people who listen to it experience a similar thing, and I think that's really
Yeah,
cool. And I think the same thing applies for G1.
yeah,
They weren't there in '84. It doesn't matter though, because they
right.
totally get Optimus Prime. They totally get Megatron and
Mhm.
Starscream and all of that. And it's true that the storylines kind of.
Absolutely. I think, one of
Oh,
sorry, there was a little bit of a digital burp there. Sorry, go ahead,
okay.
go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No, I was just gonna keep rambling.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, it's just like it was one of those things where like the video froze and I misread it as you being done. So sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. But
No
one
worries.
one of you just mentioned folks experiencing it that weren't living in that era, and that reminds me again of one of my new favorite podcasts. It's called More Than Meets the Pod, and it's two gals in their mid 20s. So and they're going through and watching all of the G1 shows, and
Oh god,
it,
share me that link. That
it's
sounds so fun.
oh, it is so much fun. And they're both fan fiction creators, and so they have it from that point of view also. So
Yeah.
like anytime like two characters are occupying the same space, that's like I ship that. It's just like they'll just come up with like this elaborate fiction of these characters being involved just from like a line or a glance or an animation error.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's so fascinating because like we've had 30 plus years of time with this material,
Mhm.
and it takes somebody half our age to be like, oh, I never thought of it from that
Yeah,
angle before.
exactly.
That's a
It's
ton of
very
fun.
refreshing, and, it's
Yeah,
funny, I look at my, audience, breakdown on Instagram,
sure,
and it's literally like 35 to 44 is my main core audience of males, and
sure.
then it's 2 notches down for the females. It's like, what is that's that 2 notch down age group, which they're in their 20s, you know?
Yeah.
So, very funny, like, how that pans out. I mean, it's all also obviously no, I shouldn't say obviously, but just sort of, just because of the amount of the whatever, the amount of time it's been a certain way, I'll put it that way.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
my breakdown is 85% male, 15% female. So
Mhm.
it is important for me to be more in touch with the female audience.
Mhm.
Um, and just sort of balance it out too. I think I mentioned Webtoon earlier, but Webtoon
Yeah.
definitely has it right in terms of their audience split. Um, you know, I shouldn't say right. There's no right or wrong, but it's
Okay.
it's closer to 50-50, let's put it that way, than the core comic book market,
Mhm.
you know. Um and I think the core comic book market is dying. And I guess when I say
Yeah.
right, it's let's try to live longer, core comic book market. Let's not try to like kill ourselves.
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
like you guys want to live on, right? Right? You don't want to like disappear into obscurity, right?
Yeah. Well, and it's so hard with comics nowadays because like there's so many different competing philosophies. Like on one hand, you have a tremendous amount of diversity and inclusion, not just in the characters but the creators themselves, which is wonderful. On the flip side, you have pushback from gross, nasty groups that I'm not even going to name drop here, but it's like, well, we don't want this. This doesn't sell. It's all just shills for shills sake, and a lot of
Yeah.
virtue signaling, and just a lot of that ugly rhetoric that gets thrown around,
Yeah.
and it leaves me as like a lifelong comics fan kind of confused in a way. It's like I don't even know if I know how to fix comics anymore.
Right.
And to say nothing about like the recent allegations that have come to light with several long-standing creators being like outed as sexual harassers and sexual
Sure.
assaulters, and
Sure.
there's a weird toxicity that kind of,
Absolutely.
and it's again,
Yeah.
it's not, I mean, on one hand, it's the best time to be a comics fan. On the other hand, it's a worse time to be a comics fan because I'm just like, well, who's it gonna be this week? Whose body of work that I idolized when I was younger do I gets canceled? What do I get to throw out? What do I get to keep this week?
Yeah.
It's a very long way of saying that even me as a like lifelong fan, I don't know how to fix it. I I
Right. Right.
I
No,
I
I don't either. I'm glad to be like finally in the working in the comic book industry.
Mhm.
Um, Not quite as how I envisioned it as an artist, but I'm an art director, so I do a lot of things across the board. I do
Yeah.
art. I do graphic design. I lead a production team. We put books out, whether they be digital, whether they be video, so it's there's a wide breadth of media that I'm involved in with my
Mhm.
company AWA.
Mhm.
Um, and watching the comic industry evolve is very it's very painful. Some of the things you're talking about are very serious issues. Um, I the landscape has to change. The leadership has to change. One of the reasons, I almost quit my dream of getting into the comic industry was because I just had bad experiences as well. You
Mm.
know, and not to put the spotlight on me. There's nothing should take the spotlight off of the problems that are coming to light now. But you know, there are a lot of bad experiences that I had, and it's just heartbreaking. A lot of
Yeah.
passionate people are out there trying to make their way, and a lot of people are quitting. You're losing your evangelists. The
Yeah.
artists are the evangelists because they go out and they're the ones that spend 10 hours staring at a piece of paper and say, hey world, here's what I drew.
Mhm.
And nothing on writing. I'm not knocking writing or anything. It's just you could write a lot more in a shorter amount of time. And so the people that are really, like I'm not tooting my own horn here, but like
No, no, go ahead.
artists like are, I just want to say like throughout history, artists are like a breed of like creature. Like
Okay, okay.
we're integral part of society, and we push forward sort of these like we're the stuff for your eyeballs, put it that way.
Oh, sure, okay.
And like whether it was painters in the past, whether it
Mhm.
was, I don't know, like animators or whatever,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Whatever is going, a comic book artist, right?
Mhm, mhm.
we you gotta feed us, you know, and you gotta like you gotta throw us a bone, you
Yeah.
know. You gotta let us own stuff. You gotta let us create stuff. You gotta give us our space. You gotta like let us do stuff, you know. And so I was listening to a a podcast or a YouTube thing. Oh, it was actually uh that Walking Dead writer. What's his name?
Robert Kirkman.
Robert Kirkman. He was saying like, look, I'm really excited because there are a lot more writer artists that are coming back into the fold. These are the
Yeah.
people I'm really excited about. And I was like, yeah, like remember when Image was the thing
Hmm.
and it was like 7 artists that literally took the comic book industry by storm. And then
Absolutely.
look at Webtoon, which is writer artists most of the time, right? They just get to just draw and write what they want. And you know, look at Jack Kirby. He was the writer artist of his time. I know Stan Lee wrote over Jack Kirby's art, but Jack Kirby told the story in pictures. And no knock on Stan. Stan did a whole, you know, he
Of
gets his
course.
accolades, you
Of
know.
course.
Jack gets his accolades too, but Jack got a few notes, and that's actually how I work with Bill Gemmis. He'll give me a few lines on a sheet of paper. We'll do a meeting, and I'll come back with a bunch of art. He'll like it or he won't. I'm not saying I'm good, you know. I'm just saying like this way of working, giving artists a lot of power, to be expressive,
Hmm.
um, and this is how we move forward. I think from all of this, um, and you know, we have a really diverse group of artists, right? That are pushing things forward now. Um, you know, let's keep going in that direction. You know, and see where we go. You know, I think it's time. Like artists were powerful for a while in comics. Writers kind of took the scepter. I think
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
possibly time for you know and obviously you know the Frank Millers and the Mike Mignolas and
Yeah.
David Laphams and all these people they've been around, right?
Hmm.
But it hasn't been like a writer artist revolution. But I guess you could call Webtoon that writer artist revolution, you know, because these
Yeah.
people own that stuff. They
Hmm.
wrote and they drew it, you know, and it wasn't about like super duper fine art. It was actually that, you know, hey, they told a ripping good yarn, you know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the early webtoons, they weren't even good art. And I'm not saying they're bad art. I'm just saying like it's like, look, artists, you don't need to draw like Todd McFarlane and Jim Lee to tell a good story. So go
Hmm.
out there, publish on Webtoon or publish on Comixology or whatever. Get a good story out there. You know, it could take you places, you know. So it's just that's my sort of soapbox there.
Yeah, no, I hear you, and it is interesting how things kind of come in waves. Like,
Yeah,
I think we're just kind of coming out of the prolific writer wave. It's like, you had Brian Michael Bendis, Jeff
sure,
Johns, a
sure.
lot of
Mark
those folks.
Millar.
Yeah,
Mark,
there
I
you
mean,
go.
oh my God, that stuff is so entertaining. You just go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, no, no. I'm kind of fishtailing and floundering anyway. But yeah, it's just I agree with you that I think having more prolific writer artists is perhaps at least something that the industry needs to kind of get that creative vitality back to it, because I think while a lot of these superstar writers worked with some incredibly talented artists, I think a lot of it also was, and this was just kind of emblematic of the amount of output that they were making. I think they were trying to bring these comics to life as quickly as they could,
Hmm.
especially Marvel. And I think kind
Yeah.
of like in that late 2000s, it kind of had like a almost fast food kind of vibe to it, where it's just like, we're gonna put out we're gonna cancel all of the half dozen Spider-Man titles,
Yeah.
but we're gonna put out Amazing Spider-Man 5 times a month. And it's like you've accomplished nothing.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
finally, like I don't remember when it was. Maybe it was around the time of like Civil War II, like right around that time, where it was just like I got event fatigue, and I just I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't keep up. And
Well,
Um,
we talk to retailers and at our company now, and one of the things that resonated with me was that, like, another problem with the industry right now is there's just too many miniseries. And I understand why miniseries exist,
yeah.
but if a retailer has to spend his time and energy to promote something and then 3 months later it's gone, like all that work and energy, it just went down the drain. They want ongoing stories now again.
Mhm, mhm.
And I mean, again, miniseries ran their course. All of
Yeah,
those were easily shuffled to Hollywood as, hey, read this, do you like it? We'll make a movie, that kind of thing. Obviously, and
yeah,
and it won't go
yeah,
away. It's great. That's great. Everything's going good. I'm not a naysayer, and that's in that sense. I'm just saying, like, let's think about the retailers. you know.
yeah.
I
The
mean, not to
thing,
say that AWA, we're stuck doing miniseries right now as well, because it's just the nature of the business. You can't commit
yeah.
because you just don't. There just aren't enough numbers to sustain quality production crews and promising an ongoing series.
Yeah. Well, and comics has become just as fragmented as, say, any other entertainment. Like look at television. Like your various streaming platforms,
Oh
and
yeah.
and network TV and cable TV, and you know at its height, you had like 20 million people watching an episode of MASH. Now, when 3 million people watch an episode of NCIS or whatever, it's like, oh, that's some record breaking
yeah.
viewership there. and
Yeah.
and and I think comics has become kind of the same way, in that there's just so much there's a lot of good, great, incredible stuff, but there's also so much. I mean, not even mentioning quality, good, bad, or indifferent. There's just too much. And
Yeah.
for casuals, it's so hard. But for me, at least, the thing that I think that I'm fearful of with regards to the future of comics is that comics be relegated to being an IP farm. And I kind of felt that way about the time that Disney acquired Marvel. And on one hand, as a fan, I was delighted to see not just classic stories, but recent stories translated into the movies. Like I lived long enough to see a Winter Soldier movie.
right.
Great.
Yeah.
And then they did Civil War as a movie, and it's incredibly interesting to see that. And now it almost feels like the well is starting to dry up a bit.
Yeah.
And again, it loops me back around to, like, I'm not sure how to fix it. But you mentioned considering retailers. Like, I think sometimes there was a movement where, like, I think I had a buddy that's a comics retailer, and he kind of referred to the Marvel method of publication as spaghetti. Just throwing anything at the wall. If some of it sticks, that's fine. If it falls on the floor, that's fine too. It doesn't really matter, because we're just cranking out content. And I don't know.
yeah.
I think if I were to also proselytize and get on my soapbox, unfortunately, I think one of the solutions is less content. Make something that is an event or whatever truly special, by not having it so saturated by so
Yeah.
much going on.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, yeah, a lot, a lot to unpack there. um, excuse me. But first of all, I like what you mentioned about you pinpointing Disney kind of being a turning point with Marvel. But there was a turning point in the early 2000s when Bill Jemas ran Marvel
Yes.
as well, where he brought over the NBA model because he used to work at the NBA. He
Yeah.
brought the,
Yeah.
the NBA model over to Marvel, worked like a wonder, and then
Hmm.
Disney came in. They brought in their model, worked like a wonder. It might be time for a change. Every decade, it's time for a change. Something that um, re-stimulates the um, the uh, the environment. Axel Alonso was talking about on a recent interview he did with Dan Shaheen that he was one of the early people who caught onto the idea that these movies, these characters, the Hulk, the Thor, etc., they can each be a genre in and of themselves. He envisioned Hulk as a horror story. Um, uh, there, a couple other examples like Doctor Strange as that sort of, what do you call it, like supernatural
Yeah,
type
yeah,
of story.
psychedelic,
Like, yeah,
supernatural,
yeah.
a little bit of
And
a cult if you feel like it.
yeah, and then Black Panther as I don't know if he mentioned this per se, but
Sure.
possibly black exploitation type movie,
Sure. Yeah.
Um, and so, that was an idea that what people didn't think of it that way. So just that kind of fresh blood, people coming from outside the industry,
Yeah.
can be a good thing. I mean, I'm not for Bay per se, but you can say that he brought something. He came from outside the industry,
Yes.
outside of the core fandom. He brought something different. Wasn't my cup of tea, but people loved it. People ate that shit up.
Yeah.
I don't care what people say now. Like, everyone's against Bane now. I call bullcrap, because when that stuff was coming out, everybody loved it, and
Yeah.
you could not naysay that stuff in the early going, or
Right.
you would get torn down. You would get destroyed. You could not say a bad thing about uh Bay's movies in the early going. So I just kept my mouth shut.
Sure.
I even have this I started doing comedy TF Transformer stuff.
Okay.
I'll send you a couple, but I had this one that I have yet to release this day because it pokes fun at Bayformers. Actually, it I can release it now finally.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
drew it back in like 2007 even. So it's been a hot
Oh
minute.
wow.
But
So like right at the beginning then.
yeah, yeah, I'll release it finally. Thanks for keying me into it.
There you go.
But another thing too, just I want to talk about Japanese TV dramas, because
Of
Japanese
course,
TV
please.
dramas, unlike the U.S. soap operas, nothing on them. I'm being very PC here. Japanese TV dramas are like 12 episodes, dude, and they end right there.
Yeah.
And some of
Yeah.
them are so good because you're like, dude, this is a finite death. Like, this person's not coming back, you know? And how is this character going to deal with that? And how are they going to wrap this up in 12 episodes?
Mhm.
Um, and so it's just like, let's do comics like that. Maybe let's change up the format. Well, I would say, again, I'll say webtoon. Webtoon
Sure.
change up the format because you can have stories of various lengths. You don't
Mhm.
have to stick to a 20-page format, right? But let me throw another thing out there. What if you did the Japanese not Japanese TV drama style where it's 12 instead of 4,
Yeah.
right? Because maybe you can do a better arc in 12 episodes, right? Maybe there's something about a 12 episode arc that the Japanese TV drama people figured out. Maybe there's a cadence to it, right? A pacing.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
you study that, then then you could do a 12 issue graphic novel. I know it's going to take 6 years to make, because I know normal people working full-time jobs, it takes 3 years to make a graphic novel. That's why I haven't drawn or made a graphic novel yet, because it's so freaking hard.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I've made a 28 episode webtoon, right? So it's just like, let's think about it differently. Let's get, and I want to go back to writers, because I was talking about writer
Mhm.
artists, and I kind
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
excluded writers from the equation. But look at people like XKCD. Look at people like, I don't want to say people who can't draw, but there are some stick figure people out there who've managed to make a really successful comic,
Sure.
right? And so I'm just saying, like, I'm not saying I'm excluding you, writers. I'm saying be a writer artist. Find some way to convey your thing in a way that only you can convey with your limitations. Like, even artists have limitations, right? One of
Yeah.
the reasons, I don't do certain kinds of art is because that's my limitation, right?
Mm.
And so I just work around that. In the same way, writers, though you may not, though people may not be able to draw a watermelon or an apple or whatever, a female figure or whatever, doesn't matter, right? Just find a way to speak, you know. Um, and you know, uh, I think we're the driving force of the zeitgeist,
Mhm.
writers and artists and creators that aren't on some big corporate, paycheck. And I think it's up to us to become more and more controversial, and really push the boundaries,
Yeah.
and you know, get get in trouble. I think we should get in trouble, and I don't want to get in trouble. Maybe that's why I'm not famous. I'm not
Yeah,
taking risks. We
right.
have to take risks. Whether that puts you, whether that makes you an enemy of somebody, makes you a friend of somebody. I think we have to take risks to push forward the medium and to push forward the rhetoric, whatever that may be.
Yeah,
The important thing of the time, to push forward understanding. Like not many people may understand me as an Asian American, right? Um, there are things that I went through that nobody else went through. There are things that I went through that other people went through that people want to read about, you know? So there's just so much to do, you know?
yeah,
I
yeah,
wish I could do more, but I think, I want to empower people. I want to empower creators to really just get on the digital platforms, get on the physical platforms, and
yeah,
just go out there, create stuff, and make yourself known, get famous, you know? You know,
yeah.
there's nothing better in life to do. There's nothing better in life to do than get in trouble, because in the right way. I'm not saying go and loot stuff, you
Right.
know. I'm saying like get in trouble being creative,
Mhm,
like back then, if you a certain way of drawing a nude figure was getting in trouble.
mhm.
You shouldn't do that or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Um, so how do we get in trouble now, right? Not in a way to provoke people, but to like push the envelope,
Pushing the
um,
boundaries.
push the
Like,
boundaries,
you know,
and
the thing I was thinking about, during this whole thing is, let's go back to the Image 7. It's like,
mhm,
these guys, kind of took the ultimate risk and, kind of, walked away from prolific careers. I mean, it's like,
yeah,
Eric Larson could have drawn Spider-Man forever. Jim Lee could have drawn X-Men forever.
yeah,
And so on and so forth. But it's like, no, let's do something different.
yeah,
And I don't know if we've seen a revolution on that scale since.
yeah. That was early '90s. It's been a while.
Yeah. Yeah,
I
I
mean,
mean,
yeah,
and a couple things that you've said a couple different times. It's like, yeah, I think it's kind of time to, shake the bottle a bit.
yeah, yeah. I
And
think it's time for a couple of these companies to get broken down into smaller pieces, like Disney,
yeah,
Marvel, whatnot. Um, even the Pixars, the Apples, the IBMs, the Microsofts, and all of these, the Facebooks, the Amazons, they all just break
sure.
them up to pieces. Um, there's weird stuff going on in the banks, right?
Yeah, yeah,
There's bad stuff, weird stuff going on. But I think we exist. We won't go down easy. I would say us as the
right, right.
masses. We're staring down the barrel of some possibly very nefarious stuff in terms of. I mean, they need us.
Yeah,
They need us peons to get to keep the world turning. So they're going to use us in some way. We just have to kind of fight back. Take advantage of what we can do with the tools that we have, which are plentiful.
mhm.
We have so many tools now to really make our voices known and to like to make a movement
Yeah.
known. Um, so in terms of back to Transformers, in terms of Transformers, what is that? I don't know. I don't know what that is. Again, like you said, it's Transformers the movie 2. Let's call it Transformers the movie 2. We don't
I
know what
like
it
it.
is, but it's gonna hit hard like Transformers the movie 2.
I love it. I am there for that. All right, Stan. Well, it has been an absolute pleasure getting to know you and learning about your art and all of these incredibly insightful conversations. This was a lot of fun, but our time is starting to run out. But before we get out of here, I want to hit you with the same series of questions I ask pretty much all of my guests. It's a lot of my previous guests and fans have kind of affectionately learned to call these the job interview questions. So, I'm going to ask you
Okay.
where you see yourself in 5 years. No, not really. But no, what I would like to ask to close us out is kind of talk about what your biggest challenge has been as an artist, and possibly how you've overcome some of those challenges. What the ultimate direction you're looking for with your art and your work. You know, are you seeking fame and fortune? Kind of what's the dream? And then finally, to round us out, and some of this is things that we've touched on already, but advice you would have for folks that want to pursue their own artistic interests, whether that be art or writing or podcasting or whatever. You know, kind of advice for the kids, I like to call it. So let's go back all the way to the beginning, and let's talk about some of the challenges you've had and how you've overcome them.
Great questions. And I haven't done a job interview in a long time, so this is I'm gonna be that nervous kid. No, I'm kidding. Challenges. Yeah, I mean, do you mean the challenge like overall or like the challenge now? Like,
Well, let's keep it current. You know, it's like what
yeah.
what as specifically as a content creator and an artist, what are you beating your head against the wall on? What's challenging you today, figuratively?
Oh, yeah, I mean, it's staying motivated, you know? Um, it's the battle is always within yourself.
Yeah.
It's not, it has nothing to do with anybody else. You want to put things into other people's hands to let them decide. So never censor your own art or whatever you want to put out because you think it's not good enough or whatever the case may be. If it's not finished, I understand.
Yeah.
But hey, you could put out a work in progress. You know, it doesn't have to be finished. So I would just say the you know, now I want to do Twitch stuff, right? So how do I get into the headspace of revving myself up? Well, I listen to the Transformers the movie soundtrack, which is still really good. I
That's
eat
great.
chocolate. I eat chocolate. I drink coffee. I'm like, I get revved up. I watch other Twitch streams. But yeah, it's just like the battle is always within ourselves, you know? And whether that's like like my apartment is too noisy because my kids are around, or because for somebody else it might be they don't have enough money to get the right equipment, or whatever the case may be. It's just like deal with it, you know,
Yeah.
and just break through your challenges, and you can do it. You know, I mean, there's nothing more I can say is that you can do it. I went from a guy who was told his whole life, do art as a hobby, do art as a hobby.
Yeah.
And I believed it. And so I followed it. But then at one point I was like, yeah, I don't want to do it as a hobby. So no, I did it. Somehow I did it, right? I had a lot of help, but I did it. Um, so, you know, I mean, and in hindsight, my dad was right. You know, do it as a hobby because that allowed me to have the headspace and not burn out,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So you just have to like have the right attitude, don't get too negative, and revisit things from your past, you know? Like I didn't like my parents until I didn't appreciate my parents until I was about 30 years old, you know?
Hmm.
And so it's just like you just have to like evolve. You have to grow older, you know? I don't like the idea that people want to stay young. I mean that's ridiculous, you know? Think of yourself when I think of myself when I was 20. I didn't know anything. I
Yeah.
literally did not know anything.
We thought we knew so much, though, didn't we?
And yeah, and it's just like even like kids, like until 26, I was like, I looked at a guy pushing a baby carriage, and
Yeah.
I literally said to myself, "Sucks to be you." But then when I was 26, I was like, I want to have babies.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just like it's weird, you know, the mind changes, and you'll see that in my art. I change on a dime. So I would say, you know, my challenge is weirdly to be more like Mike Jordan, to
Okay.
stop changing my mind so much. But in a way, I'm happy with who I am too. You know,
Hmm.
like I could be Michael Jordan if I just did one thing the whole time. You know, but
Yeah. Yeah.
but so be
I
it.
feel you.
You know, I mean, hey, I work in a startup, and being a jack of all trades has helped me immensely. So there's nothing that has been thrown at me, knock on wood, in my current company that I've been able to do really well on. So you know, do you, you know, that kind of thing, right? That's my challenge, is to stay true to myself. I will also say like there can be, you know, um, difficulties in the workplace,
Sure, of
and
course.
you really have to open up to your boss. That's all I can say is I saw a major change in my bosses when I opened up to them. And that can mean many different things. It's different for everybody, you
Mhm.
know. But whatever it means to you, you doing you, open up to your boss, get that stuff sorted out because your health is the number one thing,
Yeah.
or get out of the job, you know. So as a challenge, that challenge was a big challenge for me,
Mhm.
and will continue to be my challenge and anybody's challenge working any job is that have a rapport with your managers and your bosses, and don't be afraid to open up to them. If they don't listen to you, then more motivation to get out, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the key word there, that you're hitting on is authenticity.
Yeah.
It's like, be yourself. And, it's interesting because we're almost kind of describing the dynamics of like a relationship, right? It's like if you can't deal with me being my authentic self, maybe it's time to start looking, or that
Yeah.
kind of thing, or look
Yeah.
looking for
Yeah.
a
I
change.
think there's a point, right, where we're on good behavior,
Yeah.
but then there's a point, in any marriage or relationship where it's like, okay, here I am.
Yeah.
It's coming full force, this is me, And for me, that turning point in my relationship, not to get too deep in the weeds here, but I got really sick.
Mm.
And at that point, my R output increased after I healed a little bit. I was still very sick, but I just like, okay, my time is limited. I'm going to draw more. This is around the time I started doing more social media,
Mm.
but also my relationship with my wife and my kids. It's like, okay, I'm not going to put up with a lot of this other stuff. And I shouldn't say the word put up, but I should say I'm just, hey, here I am. Here I come,
Yeah.
ready or not, and that helped a lot for me.
Yeah, it's like I like sweatpants. This is me. It's like
Yeah.
I'm being my authentic self.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
I,
I
I
put
get
a,
you.
a huge focus on my art. I was like, look, I want to draw. This stuff passes the time, and I want to pass the time so that I can, go off on my merry way to bed, and then pass the time and go back to bed. That's it. That's how I'm gonna get to whatever age I need to get to.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. As far as I can go on to the second one.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Direction. Where am I headed with my art?
Yeah. What's the
Um,
dream?
right now, I mean, I'm very focused on my job. Um, it's it's the dream is to have a hit product as part of a company. I think a there's a thing you can learn creating a hit product at a company, and there's a thing you can learn creating a hit product by yourself. I don't think there's any order that it needs to happen, but right now, I'm you know luckily employed. So I just want to ride this in the sense that if I can create a successful product with AWA, I can learn so much more from a company perspective and from a managerial perspective. And I feel like that'll help me down the line when I create um, something, my next personal project.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, oh, good.
Oh no, you were already segueing. I was going to say, and to round that out, advice you would have for folks that want to pursue their own creative interests.
Yeah. Find a mentor. I mean,
That's a
there's
good one.
Yeah, I mean, like I'll just go back to that Robert Kirkman thing I was listening to. Like, I don't know if people know this, but his mentor was Eric Larson. He he found a way to get an he was a journalist at the time or whatever. He was
Hmm.
working with somebody or comic book shop, whatever. But like someone was gonna do an interview with Eric Larson, and he was like, "Let me do the interview," and that was his gateway into having a speaking relationship with Eric Larson. And then he started talking to him more, and he started taking small jobs from him. And then one of his friends drew a sketch of Super Patriot, which I think was something that wasn't. I don't know the full story. Don't quote me on any of this.
Yeah.
But anyway, his mentor was Eric Larson, right? My mentor, I could say, is Bill Jemas, right?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
These people open doors you would not believe. Like I was talking with Steve Orlando at Comic Con, and he had a mentor. And that mentor was the person who handed a script to Eric Stevenson, Eric,
Yep. Yep.
at Image.
Yes.
So had he not had Steve had not had that mentor, that script would have never gone into Eric Stevenson's hands, and he would have never gone published that image, right? Um, on and on. Everybody has a mentor, and find someone who clicks with you, or intern with somebody, and see if that you can click with that person. Um, you know, I'm 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 in a few Facebook groups that
Okay.
have mentor lists, but I know these
Oh,
things are around, and I know there's a mentor thing in LinkedIn as well, where if you sign up for a mentorship, they'll recommend people to you that are in your industry that have volunteered to mentor people. And all of these opportunities are available but are not being utilized. Like when I
yeah.
go to a Comic Con and I meet somebody who I feel has potential, I tell them, look, here's my card, email me with any questions, your portfolio, email me, contact me. And they don't contact me. So, and maybe they don't like me, that's fine. I'm not saying that they need to contact me, but I'm saying these
Mhm.
opportunities are out there, they're not being taken advantage of, and people are not being aggressive enough to make stuff happen, to make
Yeah,
connections happen. Connections can happen by luck, like with me and Bill Jemis. But
absolutely.
but but oh no, I should say it was luck in a sense, but it was also a connection of a connection, because with
Yes.
I networked at a con. I became acquainted with Jeff McComsey, who did the Fubar zombie anthologies. He was really big on Kickstarter. He did Mother Russia,
Oh,
and I
okay,
did,
sure.
yeah, I did a 8-page thing for him in one of his Fubar zombie anthologies, and he liked it. And he was working with Bill Jemis at the time, and he recommended me to Bill Jemis. I passed the storyboard test, the art test that Bill Jemis sent me, and then I became acquainted with Bill Jemis. So you could even say that. Well, I guess this is a tangent because it's not mentorship in that sense, but is networking. So I guess
Yeah,
that's the
yeah,
second thing, is networking, which is
yeah.
kind of like mentorship too. So it's like networking is the bigger umbrella of mentorship, which is like you network overall, and then part of networking, you get connected with a mentor who
Yeah.
takes you way faster, farther than you would ever do on your own.
Yeah, you mentioned networking, and the colloquialism I like to use is making friends. Because like folks will ask me about podcast growth and audience growth and things like that, and I'm like, make friends.
Hmm.
Who do you interact with on social media? It's
Hmm.
like, have you followed all of your favorite creators? That's making yourself visible to other fans.
Right.
And
Yeah.
it's just part of being part of that community. But yeah, one of the other things that you said a moment ago about luck, and luck is definitely a thing. It's when it's also when skill meets opportunity.
Hmm.
Folks will have all of the skill in the world and like so much raw natural talent, and they just never get that opportunity because whatever circumstances they created, like they didn't know the right people at the right time, and for whatever reason, and this happens to so many of us, their time just never came. And whereas, I mean, because like in the content creation community, um jealousy is a dark color. And even like in my space, in podcasting, there, and I'm sure a lot of you see this a lot in the art spaces as well. It's like, why them and not me? And it's just such a toxic headspace, but it is so hard to divorce yourself from that. And you just got to kind of focus on being the best you. you know
Yeah.
um not to tack too much onto your wonderful advice there as well, but yeah, I've seen a lot of folks, because like I'm in a lot of Facebook groups also, and yeah, I'll see like podcasters get discouraged because, oh man, I put out my first episode, yay, and two people downloaded it, so now I don't want a podcast anymore. And it's like what?
Yeah.
I mean, you can't have that instant gratification. But then somebody else will put out their first episode, and maybe they're like a friend of somebody that's got like a huge following. They get like a retweet, next thing you know, they've caught fire, and they're just viral.
Yeah.
It's just how it happens sometimes.
Yeah,
um
yeah, and I think that's where, working on things that are your passion anyway helps you to kinda get past the sort of the early times, put it
yes,
that
yes,
way.
yeah,
Um, yeah,
yeah.
the passion drives the content, and again, the battling with yourself is that thing that I mentioned earlier,
Hmm.
which, motivating yourself, but also ideas for content. Like, the more passionate you are, the more ideas you'll have, and then that'll be good for you, down the line. You'll really have, a backlog of stuff,
Hmm.
um, but I also wanted to add one thing for the advice,
Of course.
um, and it's that, there are a lot of people who, well, there people there's a whole sort of rhetoric out there about not working for free as an artist, or working for free in any industry, and
Ah,
I think it's a loaded thing. It's not very black and white, um,
okay.
because, um, this ties back to passion, because if the project you're being offered, taps into something you're very passionate about, the fact that you're not going to get $50 or $500 or $50,000 for it, um, the fact that the fact that, well, okay, money attached or not has nothing to do with how much better you're going to perform. You
Ah,
know? So if someone's offering you something that taps into your passion, and you find out that it's $0, it doesn't matter, because it's gonna get that good stuff out of you, which is the hardest thing to do as an artist.
yes.
Because if you sit down, you're like, "Okay, I'm ready to draw." You crack your knuckles, drink a Coke, you're like, "Oh my god, my head is blank."
Yeah.
That is the problem. And the same thing with content creation. That's the problem, when your head is blank. So if someone's handing you an idea that you're like, "Oh my god, I love this idea. Oh, by the way, I can't pay you for it." You'd be like, "You know what you should say? You should say, I don't care.
Yeah.
As long as you let me share this, with prospective employees and
Mhm.
employers, and you let me share it on social media. You let me carry it around in my portfolio. I don't care that it's free, because
Yeah.
you're going to get some of my best work. And some of your best work could be the best work you do for the next 20 years, believe it or not. Because sometimes I've looked at some of my old work. I'm like, I can't believe I drew that. I
Mhm.
don't draw like that anymore. And I don't have the patience to draw like that anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
You know? So just think of it that way. It's not work for free. It's what's going to get the best work out of you.
Mhm.
If there's money attached to it, even better. But money attached to it might mean you can't share it. In which case, even if it got the best work out of you, no
Right.
one's going to see it, right? Because it's part of somebody's private collection or whatever.
Mhm.
So, it's such a complex thing. But don't let the don't work for free thing,
Yeah.
cheat you out of the opportunity of a lifetime. If Michael Jackson came up to me and said, "I want you to do this thing, and I can't pay you for it," I was like, "But you're paying for Neverland. You got 15 mansions or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't care that it's free. I get to work with Michael Jackson. To me,
Yeah.
that's payment enough. It's like, don't get too deep into the stuff you don't need to think about.
Yeah,
All you
yeah.
need to think about is your passion, and at the end of the day, before you go to bed, you look at that thing. You're like, man, that's cool. I like that thing.
Mhm.
And I'm gonna share that around. I'm gonna get my mom to say that, really good work, son.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Because,
Which
regardless of
she
what
won't
we're
say. I'll tell you about Asian parents. Like, they'll be like, I like Picasso more.
Yeah, because I mean, we're all chasing that spot on the refrigerator, right? We all just want it there. But the last thing I wanted to kind of tack on to what you were saying, though, and I agree with you about opportunities, but I would also caution folks um, against being taken advantage of. because
Correct.
while there is those once in a lifetime opportunities, and we've all had those where it's like, oh my gosh, I get to work with so and so and all of that, but then when that becomes the norm, I see a lot of folks that are so eager to give away their best work also because they're chasing those exposure bucks. And unfortunately, last time I checked, people still die of exposure. But but you're but you're
Well,
right
well,
though.
see, yeah, that's the thing too. Like they're like, if people are like, if Michael Jackson came up to me, I don't know why I'm using Michael Jackson. So I'll say Kim Kardashian. If Kim
Sure.
Kardashian came up to me and said, "Look, Stan, I can't pay you, but I'll give you exposure," you better believe I'm going to say yes, because that kind of
Yes.
exposure, there's different kinds of exposure. Um, if it's Mary, I'm trying to think of a generic name. If it's Joe Blow
Sure.
saying, "Hey man, I'm going to give you exposure. I'm going to put your picture on a bulletin board at the local
Uh-huh.
mall, right? Or at the local ice cream parlor."
Yeah.
I'll be like, I'm not stupid. But if you're Kim Kardashian and you say you're gonna do that, I'm gonna take her on her word. If you're Kanye West, I'm gonna take you on your word. So I would say that exposure is a it's a complex thing. It's also
Yes.
very complex. Like you have to analyze. Yeah, definitely. Don't be dumb, but um, analyze the exposure. Analyze this person you're talking to, and if they cheat
Yeah.
you, and the way to be prevented from being cheated is just don't sign a long term agreement. Find
Yeah.
something that's very bite sized. Test them out, and if they're what they're cracked up to be, then keep working with them, and then start charging them. Broach the
Yeah.
subject of how
Yep.
much budget do you have now. Like can you spot me a ice cream cone. You know yeah,
Yeah.
can you spot me some Air Jordan sneakers? I
Exactly.
I got paid in like barter a couple times.
Yeah.
It didn't
Which
feel that
is
good.
all good. Yeah. I
Yeah, it
mean,
didn't feel good. Like I got paid in dinners, and I got paid
yeah.
in someone gave me it was a 28.8 modem. Only old fogies like us will know what that is. Like he gave me a modem, and that was I was like, this
Yeah.
is weird. But but hey, it's just like it all you chalk it up to learning. Um
Absolutely.
and I'll give you an experience of something that I got completely hosed on. uh,
Sure.
was was this Canadian company that did D&D type stuff, and they wanted me to draw this insect cookbook.
Okay.
They wanted me to draw a bunch of insects, and then they wanted me to draw those insects done up as dishes, like food dishes.
Oh,
And
sure.
then and I drew the crap out of it, man. Like
Yeah.
some of the best art I've ever done, and it was on me though, because they hosed me. Yes, like I either didn't get paid or I can't remember the whole story, but I screwed myself over because I had to send them the original artwork,
Oh,
and
yeah.
even though I scanned them, I lost the digital scans. So it took many stupid things on my part to be completely hosed on that,
Yeah.
completely like destroyed on that. But I learned my lesson, and it wasn't that long term of a project, and I didn't hold too much of a grudge for too long. I
Mhm.
was very jaded because I was very young at the time. But again, one bad experience won't hurt you that bad.
Absolutely.
If you really meant for this, you'll come back and come back stronger.
Yeah, well, and learn from those experiences, like you're just saying there. Stan, this has been an incredible conversation. Way more deeply philosophical than I think I was anticipating, but it's very much welcome. That's why I truly enjoy these artist spotlight interviews, because it's one thing to be like, tell me about your thing. Okay, here's the website. Fine. All right, off you go. Your art's really cool. I one of the mission statements of my podcast is, tell me about your thing, but also tell me your story. And I really appreciate how insightful you've been, and all of this great stuff you've been sharing with the audience. But before we part ways for now, could you let folks know where we can find your art on the internet, and how we can connect with you out on the social medias. And from that, anything coming up that you'd like to promote, go ahead and plug away. Hold nothing
Sure.
back. Everything
Yeah,
must
sure.
go.
So, the more steady stuff that I do is the Instagram. So Instagram, my handle is artist stan. It's all one word. I'm also on Twitter under the same handle, artist
Mhm.
stan. I'm obviously very um interested in expanding my Twitch audience. So it's twitch.tv/artist stan. It's all the same stuff.
Mhm.
And the thing, I'm on YouTube as well. If you search for Stan Cho illustration, but my, YouTube, not focused on as much for now. But yeah, on the Twitch stuff, one thing I'm thinking about expanding into is there's this thing called stream avatars. You might have seen this before, where you have a bunch of sort of animated pixel characters running around on the bottom of the screen, and they're all kind of alive and they're kind of running around. Have you seen that before?
No, no, I'm trying to think
Okay.
of if I've seen that before, but I don't know if I have.
Okay, so it's like, imagine like a bunch of Pokemon characters just running around on the bottom of the screen, while the person is running their Twitch stream, whatever that may be, right?
Okay.
Um, and so my idea is like, why don't I just start building out uh my avatars, my Twitch avatars, and just start building the collection of animated Transformers characters walking around on the bottom of my screen. And
There you go.
they're autonomous, so they walk around, they sit, they might jump, they might shoot their gun or something,
Oh my
or
gosh.
and you can do auto games. You can do, like, if you just type exclamation point battle royale, they will start battle royaling each other until there's one man standing. There's another one. It's like basketball. I don't even know what that does. You can have them all dance. And the other cool thing is it incentivizes the Twitch stream itself, because people can get assigned avatars. So if you come into your to stream, if you're assigned
Okay.
one, you come in as your favorite character. And that character may have a custom bow tie on his head, or
Yeah.
a band around his arm, or a tattoo, or whatever, a special gun, or a special color um, head or something. So it just seems like an interesting way to do something that's not I haven't seen anybody doing out there, to grow my Twitch stream, just to customize it for the people that want to join a community, not just consume stuff, but be
Yeah.
part of a community of Transformers fans with representation on screen.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it's like we're talking about this VR thing, right? And it's just
Yeah.
like, how do we make it more interactive? Because if it's just us in our rooms looking at people playing Street Fighter, it's not quite there yet.
Right.
But imagine if there's an actual audience of avatars that are unique. There's another thing called Marble Madness, which is like,
Sure.
um, right, which is you join the stream and you have a marble. You can customize your marble, and all the marbles go into this huge race to see who's going to win. And I've been in some smaller Marble Madnesses where I win, or I'm in the top five, and it's kind of exciting towards the end. So it's a little bit more interaction, and it's very cutting edge to me, this kind of stuff. And I think these things will become more and more popular as the need arises, which is now. you know so and my need is now for Twitch. That's my
There you
interest.
go.
So maybe I can make ends meet in that sense. And it'll motivate me to create a full set of G1, sorry everybody, G1 only, G1 stream avatars, which then I can
Sure.
parlay into a clickable adventure, like a LucasArts style point and click adventure, or Sierra, depending on your preference.
Yeah.
But the old Sierra games, point and click. Then I can finally get into that arena, because if I don't have the assets, I can't even consider start creating something like that. So I got to do
Yeah.
baby steps. But meanwhile, while I'm doing the baby steps, I can build an audience. So
Mhm.
it seems like the dice are falling into place. But I'm gonna jump ahead and say, like, let's say a couple years down the line, you know, maybe I can do that fan G1 Transformers game that everybody, I shouldn't say everybody, but a lot of people on Instagram are saying, so Stan, when's your G1 pixel art Transformers game coming out?
Ah,
And
yeah.
So that's been definitely in the back of my mind. How am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? And so, these are the early stages of that.
Very cool. Now, if folks wanted to financially support your art, like do you have a Patreon, a Ko-fi, or any of the other fan crowd source type of platforms?
Not yet. And my philosophy behind that is that I want to contribute to the community
Yeah.
for an extended period of time for free before I ask for anything, because I think that's just the way the economy works.
Yeah.
It's a free, what do you call it? Free, not freemium, but it's a free to download style of mindset. Kind of like
Ah,
free to
yes.
play. You can play free to play for the rest of your life. I will not care, because I don't own it anyway. It's once it goes into the community, it's kind of owned by the community, right?
Yeah.
Um, but at some point down the line, I may need a little bit of help to push something out that's a little bit unique, and I want to spend a little bit more time on it. Then yeah, I might go out and ask for something from the audience. But it's going to be a little while before that, I think.
Fair enough. Well, Stan, it looks like darkness is falling where you're at.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I figure the less people see my face, the better anyway. So I'm like,
um, but before we part ways, any particular parting thoughts? The things that we like, any shout outs you wanted to give? Anything that we meant to cover but didn't, real quick before we sign off?
no, I want to thank you for being on with me for chatting for almost 3 hours. I
Yeah,
really enjoyed this interview. So thank you so much for responding to my request to be on your show.
yeah.
I love to talk, as you can tell. I have tons of things to talk about still. So and I love your show. My first episode was the Flint Dilly show.
Oh
And
yeah.
the second one, I listened to the Transformers art, a female Transformers artist, which I thought was very entertaining as well.
Oh, very
Um,
good. Yeah, Apollo is
so
awesome. She's great.
yeah, Apollo, that's right.
Yeah.
And it was cool, how she's an indie artist, like me, right? And we're just out there just having fun, and I think I don't want to lose sight of that, and
Yeah.
that's why it's not like, I have reached out to John Barber at IDW, just throwing that out there,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
I'm asking for, official Transformers work. No official reply yet, but keep you guys posted on that.
Very cool. Well, we will look forward to that. Again, Stan, this has been an absolute pleasure. We will have to do this again. If for no other reason, then we've got the 35th anniversary of Transformers the movie coming up next year,
Yes.
and I've got so many of these fandom questions I didn't even get around to asking. It's like I asked like one or two, and then we were off to the races. But we'll
Yeah.
have to
Oh, and one, I
leave
do
things
have
there.
one. I have one shout out. Sorry,
Okay,
I do
yeah,
have one
yeah.
shout out for I think it's TF Walrus or TF Raw. He does the I don't know if you know him on Twitter, TF Raw.
Hmm.
He released, I think it was him. He released the storyboards, the Transformers the movie storyboards
Oh,
a while
yes.
back.
Yes, yes.
And then he just releases all this old school stuff. So I just want to say, a little thank you to him for just inspiring me, like, for a lot of stuff. And then, like, he is putting together this Japanese language version of Transformers the movie, which has English subtitles, which is really funny because the
Oh,
Japanese language
wow.
version has completely different dialogue for a
Yeah.
lot of the scenes. So he found a way to translate all this to English, and I speak Japanese, and
Okay.
I was a translator, so I'm actually helping to refine it a little bit for him. But
Really?
part of the perk of that was I got this. Well, I don't know if I should say this on air, but I'm working on a really nice copy of the movie, which I didn't
Really?
have before. So um,
Oh my goodness. Well,
that
color
to
me
me,
intrigued.
that to me is nice. Um, but anyway, just shout out to him for kind of sharing stuff with the community, and and getting in touch with me, and just you know
Yeah.
getting acquainted with him. That's all.
Well, and absolutely, the website is tfraw.com, and yeah, you're right. He is at Walrus Law on Twitter, and yeah, if you have not checked out TF Raw the website, several other podcasts that I'm buddies with, tfu.info, Autopod Decepticast. You know, there's a lot of folks that pull from that great material that's out on TF Raw. There's like all kinds of like, you know, storyboards and scripts and yeah, just a wealth of
Yes.
alternative Transformers content. So yeah, definitely check that out. And I want to give a quick shout out to Dusty. He was hanging out with us for the better chunk of the interview and was kind of commenting in the in the margins in the chat on
Oh,
YouTube as
yeah,
well.
yeah.
So
Dusty, he commented to me. He messaged me before. So thanks, Dusty, for listening in.
yeah, that was really cool. So really appreciate everybody checking out, hanging out with us on the live stream and listening on the podcast. But that will do it for this week's show. I got no more show for you. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. You will be able to hear this episode on the Mike Seibert Radio podcast feed in the next couple weeks. I think this week I have part 2 of my interview with synthwave artist Glitbiter, and we actually talk about synthwave instead of talking about Star Wars and Star Trek for an hour, getting to know each other. But that's Florence is awesome. Her music is awesome, and I think you're really going to like the interview. But if you would like to listen to my podcast, Mike Seibert Radio, subscribe on Apple Podcasts and Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And you can check out the full show archive out on SoundCloud. Like, share, rate, and review the show. Let us know what you like and what you'd like to hear more of in the future. Mike Seibert Radio is produced by Dave Sanders and is powered by Poddex. For Mike Seibert Radio, my name is Mike.
My name is Stan Cho.
And until next time, wear your mask, wash your hands, and make good choices. All right. And well, oh man, Stan, you are like super dark now. I can't even see.
I'm gonna turn on the light now.
All right. Well, and I am going to stop the live stream. Goodbye, YouTube. Goodbye.